Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Louisville, Colorado City Council meeting of February 7th. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call. City Clerk?
Mayor Maloney,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fahey,
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Here.
Councilmember Lay,
Here.
Councilmember Mouse.
Here.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to approval of the agenda. I propose we make a change to the agenda. We move the appointments to just before the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved. Oh, second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. Next, we'll move on to public comments on items not on the agenda and items that are on the consent agenda. This is a chance for anyone to speak to any item that's not on the agenda or the consent agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Please tell us your name and if you are a resident of Louisville. And I do have 3 sign-up cards, so we'll start with those first. First is Grace Gee.
Thank you. Grace G., 1449 Adams Place. I'm addressing City Council's decision on the Community Resilience Sculpture. I'm an LCC member and chair of the Public Art Subcommittee. I completed open government training in May 21 with the EDI task force. I want there to be absolutely no doubt inside or outside of this room that the correct process for this project was followed and has been reviewed and approved by the city manager's office. I'm deeply disappointed by your decision to put the sculpture on hold. It is not and was never meant to be the official memorial with a plaque that gives the date and story of what happened with all the facts and figures. This is a piece of healing art meant to bring beauty and joy and recognize our community's resilience. Why was it put on hold when at the January 10th meeting, Councilperson Most is on record saying, "I think it's a beautiful sculpture and I think it's totally site appropriate for City Hall." Council members allowed accusations from a disgruntled LCC member who didn't get his way to cast doubt on the entire process. Mark Cathcart made fools of you when you repeated his accusations without doing your due diligence. No member of LCC was asked or given the opportunity to respond before you put his accusations into the public sphere. That's embarrassing. You wrongly allowed one fire survivor to speak for all fire survivors, then concluded not enough people were consulted, yet there were multiple opportunities for public participation. This was a national call for art submissions, announced on multiple county websites and all citywide communications. It was on LCC's agenda each month since March 21. 4 community groups representing the majority of fire survivors were updated weekly and had no concerns for design, location, or process. The winning artists consulted fire survivors, the jury had multiple fire survivors, and a 15-day public comment period received no comments. This is not a process that left out fire survivors. City Council's decision to put a hold on this project is a slap in the face. It shows a lack of trust in LCC and disrespect for the hundreds of volunteer hours put into this 10-month-long project. Without any thanks, you tabled it, effectively crippling LCC. Each of you said art isn't your area of expertise, and yet you disregarded the artists that you pointed to LCC who are your experts. Putting a national call for art on hold hurts Louisville's reputation in the art community, is dismissive of the artists, diminishes trust with city leadership, and opens you up to liability. The city's public involvement policy states that city council must recognize efforts and activities that preceded its deliberations. This was not done. I urge city council to greenlight this project as it was presented, restore our trust in city council and Louisville's reputation in the art community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Beth.
Beth McLennan, 1030 Johnson Lane, Louisville. I'm speaking not nearly as eloquently as my fellow LCC member Grace. However, I just wanted to give you 2 points. First of all, I was a juror on the public art process. All of the jurors were chosen for either the fact that they were artists or residents in Louisville or fire survivors. I'm not actually a fire survivor, but I was deeply affected by the fires, and I was honored to be part of the jury process. I spent the better part of a weekend making my decision, and I was very pleased with both the system that the LCC had put in place and the choice of jurors to decide who would win the call. Secondly, I feel like your decision to table the process did not and does not go along with the public art approval process that you, council, us, the LCCC, and the people of Louisville have put into place. It's a longstanding way that we use to approve public art, and I do not believe that it was followed in what has happened right now. And I also urge you all to greenlight this sculpture. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have House District Representative 12, Kyle Brown. How's that for a title?
Hi, Council. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I wanted to come by and just say thank you for the opportunity to serve with all of you. I know with my appointment to the state legislature, I had to resign very quickly and much more quickly than I would have wanted to. And I didn't get a chance to really say goodbye to this role and to all of you in my council capacity. So I just wanted to come by and say thank you for the ability to serve with all of you, and that I'm looking forward to working with all of you in my new capacity as our state representative. I also want to say thank you or congratulations to the folks that you are going to select this evening, and hope that I can be a resource for them as a former Ward 3 council member, and also to all of you in anything that the city of Louisville may need. I hope you all realize that my door is always open, and that I will continue to love Louisville and serve this community in this new role. So again, I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to be a part of this council for the last 3 years. I'm extremely proud of the work that we've been able to do. We haven't always agreed on everything, and that has kind of been a beautiful process in and of itself. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. And I look forward to continuing to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Do we have any other public comments or anybody on Zoom? All right, looks like there's no more comments. We'll move on to item number. What?
Comment as
Yes?
a member of the public?
Sure.
Or perhaps ask a point of personal privilege. And this may be something that others want to do too, but I wanted to say thank you to Councilmember Brown for the leadership that he provided on council. I will miss, as I told my fellow Councilmember Most yesterday, walks with you around and around and around and around Community Park, talking about various pieces of city business, sometimes families and so forth. But I know you're going to do a great job. I know you're already doing that, and just get to work.
Get to work. Nice. We're going to move on to item number 6, appointment of Ward 3 council members. So I want to talk about this process. So Dr. Brown was formerly a Ward 3 member, as I was as well. The council voted me as mayor, which opened up my slot, and then the resignation of Dr. Brown moving on to the state legislature opened the second one. So we had 2 openings for Ward 3 council members. Last week, we interviewed 7 people, and it was a tough decision. I think that, we really haven't made a decision yet, but I think that what I want to say is the 7 people that we interviewed were very qualified. And it's gratifying in a community like this to have people who are willing to serve on city council. It's a terrific thing of public service, but we had 7 people who are very qualified. Our action tonight is to really select 2 that we will, we have the judge here, and so we'll be swearing them in. So first, I'll just see if there's any public comment on this particular issue. Okay, not seeing any public comment. Council questions and comments?
I don't have a question. Well, actually, I guess I do. I don't know the last names of the 2 people that I would like to nominate for filling these 2 positions. One is Barbara and one is Dietrich. Do we have the last names? Barbara Hamilton and Dietrich Hoffner. Thank you, Meredith.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would make a motion to appoint those 2 people to fill the vacant spots. Thank you.
We need to do one at a time.
Oh, one at a time.
But go for it.
Okay, I will nominate Dietrich then.
Second.
I'd like to make a comment if I could.
Sure.
So I feel compelled to comment on this process. And I think that appointing city council members is probably one of the most significant responsibilities we have as council members. And my personal feeling is I'm a little uncomfortable with the way this process has unfolded. And this is absolutely no disrespect and no comment on the amazing quality, integrity, and desire for public service to the individuals who are going to be appointed this evening. I feel like making this appointment is so important that there really needed to be some active council conversation in public, because that's how we do our business, before these decisions were made. And we as a council and as a city, and I think as a community, have expressed a really significant commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And one of the things that I've been learning about trying to pursue those in an organizational way is that process is a really important part of achieving that goal. And if you don't have processes that are open and transparent, and I think we as a community, as a council, have a real commitment to that what we end up with is something that falls short of that goal and that objective that I think we all agree we're trying to reach. And so I would have liked last Tuesday to have spent some more time actually talking about the amazing candidates that we had. And I had an interesting experience because one of the people that applied happens to be a good friend of mine, Sherry Summer. So I had an inherent bias in a way. And what's interesting about that bias is I didn't think Sherry was going to interview very well. And as it turned out, I thought she interviewed incredibly well. And what was really interesting for me about that interview was that I learned a lot about her that I thought was really interesting and important. And one of our, we have obviously many brilliant, amazing, committed people in our community. And one of them sent an email to us just prior to the interview process. And she pointed something out which I thought was really significant and had a profound impact on me. She said, when you're asking people about equity, diversity, inclusion, you have to speak to their experience, not their views. And it was a big aha moment for me because I believe that we have, again, a responsibility and I think a shared commitment to EDI in this community. And what that means is that we as a council, as a city government, as city staff, and as a community are gonna have to do some self-reflection, especially as we live in a predominantly white and wealthy community. And as I've said from this dais before, I've benefited from white privilege my whole life. But there are places in my life where I feel like I've had an experience of being on the outside or even being marginalized, whether that's as a single mother by choice in a community that is primarily made up of people in traditional marriages, and certainly the only one on the dais, as a woman in tech for the last 40 years, and then you can imagine 40 years ago, it was a very interesting situation to consistently be the only woman in the room, oftentimes. And also, honestly, as a member of the Jewish community, which is suffering from the worst anti-Semitism in this country and across the world that we've seen in decades. And so there are moments in my life where I've had glimpses of being sort of outside, even though I've benefited from many privileges my whole life. And one of the things that really was compelling to me, getting back to the subject at hand, when Sherry was speaking, was that we were asking questions of our applicants about their views on EDI and their views on things like affordable housing and their views on reaching out to how you would manage difficult or complicated conversations or situations. And what was fascinating for me as a friend of Sherry trying to remove my bias from the situation was to hear her speak about growing up as an Iranian American in the 70s in this country. And those of you who are old enough to remember what it was like to be, what was going on in this country with Iran in the 70s and to grow up with that, to grow up with a mother who suffered from mental illness and who was the oldest child with 4 younger brothers who had to take care of them, and to really not just have empathy or to have views on mental illness, but to have lived through it, to have grown up in affordable housing, not to understand it as an abstract intellectual concept, but to have lived it. And so I was really surprised. I didn't know these things about Sherry until she applied and I heard her speak. And she also, I do know that she also has been taking care of an elderly parent with dementia. And she has often had 24/7 responsibility for days on end doing that. And I've often talked about how when we think about public policy in our community, we need to be thinking not just about, people who are financially secure and part of our community and, or have nice houses and nice things and get to benefit from all the things we get to benefit from living in this wonderful place. But we do have people who struggle financially. We do have people who are impacted by mental illness in their homes. We do have people that are suddenly confronted with having to take care of elderly parents on their own. And so the point being with all of this is that for me, when I heard those things, and I thought to myself, this is someone who has these kind of experiences, and I think as a community, we need to embrace those people. We need to reach out to those people and to include them in our government, in our appointed boards and commissions, in our city staff, and embrace them in our community. And so for me, I felt like in some respects that we rushed this process, and I understand why we rushed the process, and I understand how, how we came to where we are, and we have 2 incredibly fine, gifted, talented people who are gonna join us this evening. And I just wanted to be able to say those things that I said tonight, and I felt like I didn't have a chance to do that, and I felt like that made me feel like I was on the outside. And I think as a body, as a city, as a community, we need to do better. And if I can feel that with all the privilege that I've had, then that makes me feel like we have people in our community who are not being served, who are not being necessarily listened to, who are not being engaged in the way we need to engage them. And so I wanted to use this opportunity to share those feelings and to just have the chance to say what it was I wanted to say, and to really be amazed at someone that I thought I knew. And I think for me, it was a huge lesson to really listen to people, to really think that you think you know people, and sometimes you don't even know them, you know? And I think for me, it's just something that I want to bring into council more, and I want to focus, you know, and I'm gonna do this whenever it's possible, is to try to say, hey, wait, is this process really the most inclusive, equitable process we can use? And are there other ways to do that? And I know that my fellow council members are also committed to this. And I think the hardest thing about EDI is that it requires us to make ourselves uncomfortable, and it requires ourselves to do some self-reflection all the time, even in the face of urgent problems we have to solve, and schedules we're trying to meet, and demands that we all have on us. So I just wanted to share that with everybody tonight, and I appreciate you indulging me. Thank you very much.
You bet. Any other comments before we go to a roll call vote? Councilor Lay.
Just briefly, one thing that I wanted to say, that's a couple of points to make. One, that meeting last week was very public. People from the public were there. It was televised. People had input. People heard our comments. People heard all of the questions. People heard all of the answers, which were incredibly insightful and helpful. And the packets that went out a week ago Friday in preparation, it may have been, is that correct? A week ago Friday, roughly? I commend to residents to read and review, because I think in a way that a council interview that is necessarily short doesn't allow, they addressed a great deal of some of the pressing issues that the city is facing, including issues of EDI. And I do believe you mean, Councilmember Most, I'm not going to suggest for a minute that you had, you were able to say the things that you, or you had maybe things organized in your head to say what you said tonight. I appreciate your saying what you're saying tonight. But I think there was an opportunity. One of the things that I don't want, the second thing is, I do not want to take away in any way from the spotlight tonight for the people who are joining us, who are, as the council member mentioned, just fantastic people in their own right. I think, third, there is something that's really important about process in this case. I think that there was a pretty substantial process leading up to the selection, certainly of one of the fillers of the vacancy over the course of the last several months to reach out directly. I know I did. I think other people did as well, and to try to encourage diverse candidates to apply. And we're continuing to do that. And I'm not going, I'm with you when it comes to saying that we need to do more. I'm not going to say, I will say that words from our mouths on the dais, no matter what they are cold comfort, as I understand it, from talking to people who are concerned and who are the subjects of EDI efforts without action. And as one of the several people on council, including former Council Member Brown and Council Member Dickinson, who started some of these efforts, thankfully, though belatedly, a few years ago, and have gotten folks to provide us information. I think we're on the road, not as far along the road as I would like, nor they, nor Councilmember Most or me or I think the rest. But we're about ready to hire into our city council or into our city government a EDI officer. And I think that's going to help. So I do want to say that. I think one other thing that is a challenge is process. It's very important that we, from a due process standpoint, ask people the same questions. The questions are pretty broad. People answered in all kinds of ways, and if you look at the video, I think you'll see how they did that and raised different things. Some of them raised experiences in the area that Councilmember Most mentioned, or others. But there are a lot of different considerations go into that. I'm not looking to be defensive so much as I am saying there's a lot of things to do when a whole ward is unrepresented, which Ward 3 was for a very brief period, but for a period. And getting that done, I think, was if imperfect, a very successful process in the end. And I'm very pleased with what we have, and I'm glad you are too, Councilmember Most, because I know that that's not where you're headed on this. So we need to be mindful sometimes that particularly when we're making decisions, we make decisions on the best information we can. Trying to pull in information that wasn't there before is what EDI is partly about, is getting information to us, getting people and decisions before bodies that were in the mix before, and that's good. But there are limited amounts of time that we have to talk with council, with candidates, and we, I think, did that as well as we can. I'm proud of you and the other members of council who were there and I appreciate the Councilmember Brown's decision and his timing not to be a part of that discussion, because I think he recognized that he was going to be moving forward. So at any rate, the processes are never perfect. I think this one was a good one, a solid one, a very public one, and we have more work to do. Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Lay. Could we have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Most?
Yes.
Mayor Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for the second appointment?
Second. So moved.
Oh, I asked, do we have a motion for the second appointment?
Oh.
Would you like to make a motion on the second appointment?
His phone's ringing.
On the second appointment, and the second appointment would be no, the second appointment would be Barbara Hamilton.
Yes.
I move for.
Okay. Were you raising
I'll
your
make
hand?
a motion to approve Barbara Hamilton for a seat on city council.
Second.
Okay, you can pick who seconded that. Would you do a roll call on that, please?
Councilmember Most?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fahey?
Yes.
Mayor Maloney?
Yes. Thank you, everybody. So at this time, we're going to ask the judge, he's here somewhere, to join us for the oath of office for the Ward 3 members. And we will start with Dietrich first, since you were the first appointment. After both of the appointments are sworn in, we're going to take a 15-minute cake break.
I'll read it and you just repeat after me, okay? Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Dietrich Hoffner,
I, Dietrich Hefner,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the ordinances and the Home Rule Charter of the City of Louisville, Colorado,
the ordinances and the Home Rule Charter of the City of Louisville, Colorado,
and faithfully perform the duties of the office of City Council, Ward 3,
and faithfully perform the duty of the office of City Council, Ward 3,
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Do I need to sign something? Do I need to sign it?
So you can follow along if you need to.
Okay.
I'll try to lead you through it.
Sounds good.
And the last name is Hamilton?
Hamlin.
All right, thank you very much. All right, raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, Barbara Hamilton,
I, Barbara Hamilton,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the ordinances and Home Rule Charter of the City of Louisville, Colorado,
the ordinance and the Home Rule Charter of the City of Louisville, Colorado,
and faithfully perform the duties
and faithfully perform the duties
of the office of City Council, Ward 3,
of the office of City Council, Ward 3,
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we will reconvene at 6:45.
meet Ryder in person. If I can't sit up there, then I'm out. I'm kidding. One Hamilton is enough.
All right, we'll call the Louisville City Council meeting back to order. We'll move on to item number 7. Oh, we already did that. And we had cake. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Are there any changes to the consent agenda? Maxine?
I have a,
Excuse me, Counselor Most.
that's okay, you can call me Max. God, this is loud. Okay. I would like to take item F off the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll move, City Clerk, can I move it to the next item? Can I make it 4.5? We'll make it 4.5. Okay? All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. So we'll move to 4.5. Counselor Most, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you. I did want to make a comment, and this goes to my, the room is much emptier now. My previous comment about process, as far as the LRC and the LCC, I feel like we talked about that. We talked about that in a public meeting, about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And I guess, again, just from a process standpoint, I won't go into my whole tirade about it, but I do think the fact that we basically appointed somebody to a position that wasn't even vacant until we just voted a few minutes ago, to me, doesn't reflect the kind of community engagement and transparency that I think that we ought to be looking into. And I know that we're going to be looking at boards and commission process this spring, and so I assume that we can just, you know, talk about all of that stuff then. But I just did want to point it out because I think it's really important, especially with planning commission. It's such an important position. We do often tend to only interview for planning commission because it's so critical to our community and the way we grow and reflecting the values of people in the community. So I just think it warrants more consideration than kind of having a meeting 1 week and kind of having a recommendation go forward and just putting it on the consent agenda. So.
All right, so your point you're making is about process. I did a little research. The city council adopted that process July 25th, 2017. So it's been, the process has been followed since that period of time that I've been on council. We've made mid-year appointments the last few years. During the last year, we did some. So we are following the approved process. When we had the board and commission discussion, which I believe is in March or April, we could certainly open that up as a discussion item. Do we have a motion on this particular item? So it's to approve the 3 appointments to the LRC, the planning
Yeah, Dennis,
commission.
I can make a motion.
Thank you.
Yeah. I move that we approve the appointments to Cultural Council, Revitalization Commission, and Planning Commission.
Thank you, Councilor Dickinson, and we have a second from Councilor Lay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay. Yay, I don't know.
Did you get that vote? Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is council informational comments on pertinent items not on the agenda. Councilor Fahey, excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Fahey.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like, in view of the circumstances in the last day and a half, to extend our sympathy and compassion to the earthquake victims in Turkey and Syria. Being the victim of our latest catastrophe, this one is much worse, affects many more people. The last I heard, there were over 6,700 buildings that collapsed and more than 7,800 people killed and tens of thousands injured. And so I just think that this is a catastrophe of immense proportions, and I want to extend our sympathies to the victims. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fahey. Any other things? I have one. As a council, we'd like to acknowledge and take a moment. February is Black History Month. Every president since 1986 has proclaimed February as Black History Month, and we as a council support this proclamation. This is a time to celebrate and highlight the achievements of the Black community throughout our nation's history. It's also a time to reflect on misconceptions and wrongdoings, both current and past. One of the things that, speaking of resources, there are excellent resources at the library and the Historic Museum to learn about the Black history in our city and our state and our country. And I urge you to take advantage of the many. I looked at the resources, and it's interesting how many publications, materials, and books have been curated by the library. And I've certainly taken advantage of those over time. So I really want to thank the director for all that work and just acknowledge the Black History Month. Any other council comments? All right. Now we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to regular business, item number 9A. And I will read through all three of these. All three of these we will address at the same time. So North End Block 11, 1501 East South Boulder Road. First is ordinance number 1846, Series 2022, an ordinance approving a Fourth Amendment to the North End General Development Plan to amend allowed residential uses on Planning Area 1 and standards for roof overhang encroachments within setbacks and easements for Block 11. This is the second reading. And then ordinance number 1847, Series 2022, an ordinance approving a partial vacation of 6 portions of an exclusive city utility easement on Block 11 of the North End Block 11, replat North End Parcel 1, Outlot H and Outlot K replat subdivision. And then we'll also address resolution number 6, 2023, a resolution approving a planned unit development amendment and a final plat with amended subdivisions agreement for mixed-use development consisting of 38 residential units, 40,562 square feet of commercial development at Block 11 of North End, 1501 South Boulder Road. Are there any disclosures for this?
Yeah,
Yes,
I have
Counselor.
one. I'd just like to disclose that I did hear and act on this application in my former capacity as a planning commissioner, but I'll be making my decision tonight based on the evidence presented during this hearing. And I don't believe that my prior participation as a planning commissioner will affect my ability to hear and act on the application tonight.
Thank you very much. Any other disclosures? All right. So we will open the public hearing with the staff presentation.
All right, good evening, Mayor Maloney and Commission and City Council members. My name is Ellie Hassan. I'm a planner too with the Community Development Department. And as the mayor cited, the item before you is a combination of Ordinance 1846 and 47, as well as Resolution 6, which recommend approval for a General Development Plan Amendment, a Planned Unit Development Amendment, a final plat with easement vacations for mixed-use development at Block 11 of North End, which is also addressed as 1501 South Boulder Road. And this item has been duly noticed with both the Boulder Daily Camera as well as the posting and mailing locations in the city. And just for a little bit of context, this property is a 4.5 acre parcel that is zoned for community commercial and residential. It's located in the 73.8 acre North End development, which was originally approved in December 2006 with a subdivision plat, GDP, and PUD, or Planned Unit Development. There have been many iterations to this property since 2006, with the latest being from 2017, which was for Block 11 specifically to do a General Development Plan Amendment, Planned Unit Development Amendment, and final plat, which allowed 38 residential units and 40,000 square feet of commercial space. And the amendments proposed tonight are to change the housing types from this plan, along with some site design and other requested revisions. And the applicant, as the first part of it, is requesting some amendments to the GDP. This would be the Fourth Amendment. And this reflects a mix of multifamily and commercial area and the elimination of single-family and townhome duplex housing. So on the 2017 GDP, there was, let me see if I can go into laser pointer real quick. All right, looks like that's visible for everyone. So in the third amended GDP, there was a mix of housing in the northern portion of the site. And in this Fourth Amendment, the applicants are strictly moving with multifamily and changing the symbology of the GDP, as well as some other amendments to reflect this symbology change. Oh, and as a note, there is another amendment which does just give a overhang. It gives an overhang encroachment for Block 11, which basically allows roofs to extend into the setback a certain distance. And also for the final plat and easement vacations, the applicant's requesting a replat to subdivide Block 11 into 3 lots, 2 of which are going to accommodate the multifamily, and 1 of which is going to accommodate the commercial development. The applicant, as part of this, is proposing easement vacations to vacate easements that are no longer needed from the 2017 plat, which are shown in green over on this slide. And this plat will also establish new easements that are needed to accommodate the new site layout in the planned unit development. And moving on to the planned unit development scope, this amendment proposes the construction of 17 buildings, which include 4 commercial retail office buildings on the southern half of the site, which are indicated on blue here, as well as 17 multifamily buildings, which contain 38 dwelling units on the northern portion of the site. The site layout has a private drive that goes north-south and connects South Boulder Road to the south up to Hecla. There's also an east-west drive access, which goes onto Blue Star Lane. And within the property in the residential portion, there is an alleyway that connects the site to the rest of the site and provides access to the residential units through alley-loaded garages. There's also plenty of walkways which are distributed and dispersed throughout the project, as well as some trail improvements to the west here from the original 2017 PUD. There are no changes to the southern drainage area from the 2017 PUD, which includes and maintains a 35-foot drainage easement along this portion of the site. And a little more detail for these commercial developments, there are 4 commercial buildings on the site, which vary in size from 1 to 3 stories. And I did just want to make a note that Building 3 is the only building of these 4 that does have a 3rd-story element, and it's located towards the center of the building. And all these buildings have a mixed roof style, and they have more modern materials, which transition and help break up the 2- and 3-story massings. The color palette is mostly neutral, and I believe the applicant does have some good renderings of this as well to showcase this a bit more. And alongside the neutral colors, there are some wood accents as part of the materials as well on these buildings. In addition to the commercial, there's 13 residential buildings with 38 total units proposed throughout. And these units consist of duplexes, triplexes, as well as fourplexes, and are proposed in both a modern and farmhouse architecture style. And the materials on these do match the materials used in the commercial buildings as well as other North End developments. And moving on to the landscaping here, the staff did conclude that the portion of the site that is the commercial lot is subject to the CDDSG, or the Commercial Development Design Standards and Guidelines requirements. And the portion that is affected by this is highlighted in red here. And it is noted that there was perimeter landscaping required along the South Boulder Road frontage, as well as landscaping requirements for the perimeter of the commercial buildings, as well as parking lot landscaping in these areas. There are some trees that were in poor condition along South Boulder Road, which are proposed to be replaced. And the landscaping along the building perimeters and parking lots does meet the requirements. And just to talk briefly about the landscaping in the residential portions of the site, which are located over here and over here, there will be some new tree and shrub plantings between the alleyways and sidewalk spaces and the entrances to the units. And this portion, while not subject to the CDDSG requirements, does maintain the intent of those areas and does have some building perimeter landscape incorporated. And one thing that has changed between the Planning Commission and City Council hearing is the applicants have included a revised tree lawn landscaping plan for the medians between Hecla Drive and Blue Star Lane, which is shown on this mini map in the top here. And in these areas, during the Planning Commission hearing, the HOA requested that the tree lawns contain low water plantings instead of grass turf, as seen in other grass tree lawns in the North End development. And this was adopted in. I do have an exhibit on file if needed, but the typical tree lawn was proposing low water species in this area, as well as use of more porous materials rather than turf, so different ground covers, mulches. And what the applicants proposed based on this is some tree lawn landscaping. These are just some details taken from the landscaping plans on the top here along Blue Star and Hecla. And then the bottom is the planting materials from the HOA for reference, which inspired these 2 tree lawn plantings. The plantings have a wood mulch as well as low water landscape shrub and perennial species. And this application is subject to the inclusionary housing ordinance, which was adopted last year in 2022. And the applicants are pursuing the fee in lieu option, which does require City Council approval separate from the regular process. So the applicant's request is based on a practical difficulty in financing, which was based on the original project design from 2017, which didn't include or require inclusionary housing at the time. Staff did estimate that with the fee in lieu option, for approximately 50,000 finished square feet of market rate housing, the project would bring in approximately $463,000. And this fee is intended to capture the cost of the difference between the market rate versus if the units were constructed per affordable housing costs. And the collection of the fee in lieu does provide an opportunity for the city to leverage the fees through other funding sources and partnerships to achieve some more affordable units than may be possible with the on-site units. And as the city completes its housing study and strategic plan this year, there will probably be more discussion for how the fee in lieu can be used as a tool for the city. And another thing that the applicant is requesting is waivers from the maximum height that's established in the North End General Development Plan, which lists 40 feet as the maximum for both multifamily and commercial uses on the site. A table of different waivers is located on this slide and shows that there are 4 buildings, 3 residential and 1 commercial, that are requesting this waiver. And staff is in support of these height waivers because the proposed heights are consistent with the heights of other buildings in the North End development. And staff would also like to note that at the approximate building heights that are being proposed, with the proposed building heights, the increase in the height waiver requested was found to be relatively small impact relative to other size buildings. And staff does find the application meets the purpose and applicability in Chapter 17.72 of the Louisville Municipal Code, which addresses general development plan amendments. And this amendment was found to encourage coordinated community design by allowing for a mixed-use buffer zone between a major arterial of South Boulder Road and the residential units in the rest of the North End neighborhood to the north. And when analyzing the plat, staff found that the final plat for North End Block 11 conforms in all respects to Title 17 of the Municipal Code. And it complies with the comprehensive plan by supporting, and staff finds it complies with the comprehensive plan by supporting an urban pattern that is more compact and walkable through the creation of the alleyways and smaller lots. The plat's compliant with the GDP since it meets the minimum lot sizes that are listed in the GDP. And regarding the planned unit development amendment, staff finds that if council supports the waivers, the PUD is compatible with the PUD is compatible with the GDP as well as the municipal code PUD criteria, including compliance with the CDDSGN relevant comprehensive plan policies. And based on this information, staff are recommending approval of resolution number 6, as well as ordinance 1846 and 1847, series 2022, with the waivers requested from this development. And that concludes staff presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Do council members have any clarifying questions on the presentation or the staff report? Mayor Pro Tem Fahey?
I have one question, and that was, where would that fee in lieu go? I mean, is there a special fund in the city, or would it be?
Yeah, we would need to hold that in a dedicated fund for use on affordable housing. So our ordinance dictates that money is restricted for that use. Now, the city gets to decide within the spectrum of that use. We're doing a housing study, as you all know. So I think that's probably going to give us some strategies on how we can use fee in lieu to help promote affordable housing in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Most?
I have a question about this, and I don't know whether I need clarification from our Director of Community Development or maybe our legal counsel. The fee in lieu is, from what I'm understanding, is something that the council can or can't grant. We're not required to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So is it 12% housing allotment? So that's a requirement, and then we have the option of accepting a fee in lieu.
Yeah, the ordinance states that, you know, it's the inclusionary part of it is you include it, of course, in the development. So that's the baseline standard. So you would build it within any development. New residential development, you include the new housing at 12% of the units. An applicant can request several different alternatives to just building it on site, and one of those is the fee in lieu option, but the ordinance does say clearly that that's at the discretion of council, and there's criteria in the code for consideration of that.
Okay, and where do we get this $453,000 number?
Yeah, so we followed a methodology that a few other communities in Colorado have used to determine what an appropriate fee would be. And so generally, it's the difference in the cost of a unit. So take an ownership cost of a unit, just as an example. A market rate unit might cost, and I'm going to make these numbers up,
right,
like $500,000. Somebody who meets the income qualification, maybe they can only afford $400,000 to own that home. So the fee is intended to make up that $100,000 difference for that unit. So if the city were to buy and sell a restricted unit at the income restricted cost, that fee would cover the difference between what we could sell it for, income restricted, to what the market value would be to build it.
Right, because I'm trying to understand how that amount of money, from my perspective, is a pale in comparison to having 4 affordable housing units at that location.
Yeah, it's not meant to build 4
Right.
new units. It's meant to cover the cost differential on 4 units between an affordable unit and a market rate unit.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Oh, thank you very much. Caleb, excuse me, Counselor Dickinson. Your microphone.
And
We still
just trying
can't.
to get clear.
There we go. We can hear you now.
Okay. Well, the first thing I said was really funny. I just would like to get clarification that this is the first time, or we have not yet received a fee in lieu from any development in the history of Louisville. Is that accurate, Rob?
That's correct.
Okay. Because I think Deb and I, and it's like, how does this work, right? All of us kind of like, because it's never happened, right? And so I think it's interesting to, again, think about exactly what the options are here. And I understand that financing affordable housing units can be difficult. I'm curious what conversations you had, Rob, with the builders around using this fee on this project, purchasing units, just as you described, purchasing units in this development and then selling them as restricted units, so that in effect we do have the affordable housing on site by using this money. Is that part of the conversation at all, or does that have to be entirely separate in the deliberation?
Yeah, from a staff level, we haven't had that conversation with this specific project. I think the way we've been viewing it is really in relation to the housing study and housing strategy that we're going to be completing this year. That as we've talked about, that has to be a multi-pronged strategy to be successful. We can't have just one solution. We're probably going to have several solutions to try to address the affordable housing issue. I think having funds available is just one of those potential strategies, but we don't know how we would apply them yet. We probably need to collaborate with the Boulder County Housing Authority, other communities, rely on our consultants that are going to be doing the study to give us some really best practice strategies that you can use fee in lieu for. Just as an example, the Kestrel project, which we're all familiar with, which was developed by Boulder County Housing Authority, did include a cash infusion from the city. And I don't know all the details of how that worked, but I do know the city did help fund that just with the cash infusion, to make that project a reality. So that's just one example.
Okay. And then Mayor, if you don't mind, separate question. I didn't see, and I'm just trying to understand. I know they're asking to change the style or the type of housing, but it appears that the square footage isn't changing and the quantity of units isn't changing, just the type of unit. And I'm just curious again how that calculation is being made. I would assume a single family home is typically larger. So are we getting the same number of units for the same square footage, just different style, or are we getting? I mean, that seems to be the answer. I guess I would think if we're going with a different style, we could have gotten more units per square foot, which again helps in little A affordable housing, having smaller, higher quantity of smaller units. But curious if they were running into a max number of units per acre kind of thing. Just if you could help me understand a little bit how that process went.
Right. So the general development plan allocates a maximum number of units. So their intent all along has been to comply with the general development plan allocation of units for all of North End. That hasn't been part of this application or discussion, but theoretically, an applicant could request a general development plan amendment to increase the number of units allowed within a development, but that's not part of this. They're really just complying, and they are maintaining the same number of units that they previously had approved, but I don't know about the square footage of the units. I'd want to ask the applicant how that has changed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other clarify? I just have one clarifying question. On the staff report, we talk about the concurrency of building the commercial and the residential. And if I understand it correctly, it's basically if the commercial foundation inspection is built and passes inspection, then they can build the residential portion. So what guarantee do we have with this that they actually have to build a building and occupy it?
So this is something that was, I think, negotiated in 2017. There was a lot of discussion about how we would do a concurrency requirement. And there was concern that if we only required them to get a building permit for the commercial at the same time of the residential, that they wouldn't build at all. So there was a suggestion that, well, if they invest in a foundation, the likelihood goes way, way down that they would abandon the project just at building permit, because that's a really major investment to get the foundation in. So we'd have a much higher level of certainty they'd continue the commercial portion of the project. No guarantee, of course, ever, but it added that certainty.
It makes me almost want to put a requirement, do you have a certificate of occupancy before you allow the residential? I mean, the concern, because I was part of this discussion in 2017, and you were too, was we had other ones where the residential got built and the commercial was never started. And so we were trying to systemically fix that. So I don't know, I mean, is it advisable to take a deeper step in ensuring that the commercial is done?
I mean, I think that does add an extra layer of certainty for sure. That, for example, they can't get their residential building permit until the commercial foundations are in, and then perhaps the residential can't get a CO until the commercial CO is complete.
Oh, okay, that's,
I think that could be a condition if you wanted to add that. That would certainly absolutely guarantee that the residential couldn't be occupied until the commercial was
okay,
done.
thank you for the clarification and a pass forward. And if there's no more questions, does the applicant have a presentation? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss you, Counselor Lay?
I don't know, did you miss me? I mean, it's only been a week.
Oh, my gosh.
Anyway, sorry about that. Yeah, I wondered if there is any control that council might be able to exercise over the order in which these lots are developed, if at all.
I think it's built into the phasing, if you want to explain that.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up the planned unit development that's proposed to take a look at that.
I think it goes east to west is the
Yeah, I mean,
required
I
phasing.
realize the phasing, I mean, sometimes that's the way it's presented. I guess I'm interested in whether that's a condition of.
Yeah, it's actually written into the PUD so that it is a condition that it's part of the regulatory requirement for how they have to develop.
I believe it may also be in I'd have to double check if it's in the development agreement as well.
Okay, well, I think we're okay on that point. All right, so if the applicant wants to do a presentation?
Good evening, Council. My name is Sam Coots. I'm a landscape architect and land planner with Ripley Design, here representing Markel Homes, the applicant. I'm going to try to get through this pretty quick, but I have a lot of backup information if we need to go through questions. We've got a lot of exhibits and everything we can pull up for that. Jason Markel is here joining me tonight as well, so feel free to ask as many questions as you need. If you're not familiar with Markel Homes, they are a local builder. They've been around since the 70s, family-owned company, and they really pride themselves on being a local builder and being a very sustainable builder. In 2021, they were awarded a leadership award from the U.S. Green Building Council in their excellence for advancing green building. They're also involved in the home rebuild for the Marshall Fire. This North End development has been in the making since 2006, and this phase represents the very last portion of the North End as a whole. So it's the final build out of a sustainable infill development, and we're bringing here the final piece that brought the commercial component to the mixed use component of the entire GDP. Since the fee in lieu seems to be, it's a new element to this, and I'm going to spend a little more time on that. There are 3 different provisions that the code allows council to consider specifically when approving whether fee in lieu should be given or not as an option here. And that's whether it would result in more affordable housing, whether there are practical difficulties that prevent the on-site units, and whether there would be benefits to the inhabitants of this community, of this development. Also, any other factors are up for grabs in the code. So go through those one by one. The idea of providing more affordable housing is a very valid idea here with the fee in lieu option. And that's simply because you are able to take that fee in lieu and leverage it with housing authorities and other private developers that are specialized in affordable housing and get more bang for your buck. That is their wheelhouse. That's what they know how to do. Markel Homes, while they have done some affordable housing, are mostly a market rate developer, and they don't have those processes and systems that these other specialized housing developers might have, including access to other grants and subsidies. Practical difficulties, this comes back to just the timing of the development. Since this was approved as a GDP back in 2006, this requirement was not around back then, and the entire GDP was not crafted to include this affordable housing component in all of the different metrics that go along with a large-scale development like this, including financing and infrastructure costs. The benefits to the inhabitants, this is one of the bigger ones, honestly, and in reality, what happens when sprinkling in a couple units here and there into these developments is it raises the price tag of all the other units in that development to help compensate, right? And the true goal of why we're here tonight and for the GDP and PUD amendment is to create attainable housing. And so that's not necessarily affordable, but attainable, something that's not your high-end multi-million-dollar home that would be a single-family detached home. It's something that is a little closer to home to that average area income. So by providing that fee in lieu, it enables attainable housing to stay on this site. And just other factors, obviously we've all seen inflation and construction costs go up. Really what this is that you're able to create a better economy of a scale when you have one affordable housing project as a whole. It's easier to make those construction costs pencil through the pro forma. Just a little bit on the GDP amendment itself. I think Ellie covered this pretty well. I just want to talk a little bit about the why behind it. And it really was to nail that attainable housing aspect. When we had single-family homes on that northwest corner, those were looking to be more high price tag single-family homes. When you shrink the lot size down and are able to lay these out as a multi-family unit rather than a single-family home, it brings that price point down. It also makes sense just from a land use transition standpoint, not having single-family homes surrounded by multi-family and commercial development. So here is that site plan. I think Ellie covered that pretty well. This is just a comparison of the previous PUD that was approved in 2017 as a site plan compared to today. As mentioned, it's the exact same in terms of number of dwelling units and square footage of commercial approved here. So on the left, you can see those 6 single-family homes, and then in the middle, the townhomes and a couple multifamily buildings on the right, where now we just have multifamily across that entire north end. Just to give a glimpse of the architecture, this is a benefit of having Markel as a developer throughout the entirety of North End, as they're able to take these 15 years of experience of what's worked well material-wise, style-wise, floor plan-wise, and bring it into this final phase, and still give the opportunity to tie back and create a cohesive development with the rest of the neighborhood, but still give it a little bit of uniqueness that stands out on its own. Finally, I just want to wrap up that we had a great hearing here with Planning Commission back in December, ended up obtaining unanimous recommendation for approval there. We did have the conversation with the HOA about the landscape in the right-of-way, and we're able to come to a solution there with and make sure we've got the right plants and low water use, really easy to maintain, something that the HOA can stand behind as well. So all those changes are prepared and ready for tonight. So I'll end it there. Again, we've got a lot of backup slides and diagrams if we need, and Jason for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Councilor Most?
I have some questions. So when you say attainable housing, what is attainable housing? What does that mean? How much money are we talking about?
You know, it's hard to throw out a straight dollar figure just with the inflation and what we've seen in the last couple of years. And I'm Jason Markel. You know, it's hard to throw out a dollar figure, but, you know, we try to achieve attainable housing through platting and product type. And so we have, you know, these townhomes, and some of them are 24-foot deep, some of them are 31-foot deep, but they are small units, and in doing so, that sort of restricts, you know, what you can, you know, go to market with. And so that's sort of the idea about attainability is, you know, it's trying to identify sort of the missing middle. And, you know, that's sort of where our housing crisis lies, I believe, is, you know, we have some affordability in areas, you know, that Boulder Housing Partners are, you know, going after. But the missing middle is sort of what we get if you look at the site just as a microcosm. You know, you introduce subsidized units, and all of a sudden, you know, we have to raise the price on all of our market rate units, and all of a sudden, you know, sort of the middle class workforce housing, if you will, gets sort of aced out of that. And so that's what we're trying to, you know, combat with our product type.
Okay, so I don't really feel like you answered my question. What income level are you talking about? That's who's it attainable for? I'm just trying, you know, honestly, really trying to understand, because I actually like the idea of doing more density, and I'm not opposed to it. I do think that, especially in a multi-family unit configuration, that there's ideal opportunities to put affordable housing in. So my concern is when you say attainable, I want to make sure that your definition of attainable is the same as my definition of attainable. Because I'm speaking as a person who could not afford to buy my own home now in Louisville, right? It was attainable for me 16, 17 years ago, but it isn't now. So I really want to understand, you know, you're saying you're making these decisions and you don't think that you can put affordable housing in because it's going to increase the costs of the market rate housing, and that is going to make it apparently unattainable. I'm trying to understand what that difference is.
I can go over some comps, you know, that we're building right now. Like
Sure, and I understand that anything you say is going to be a guess and your best guess, and I completely appreciate that, but it's hard to contextualize what you're saying without having some idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. No, I understand. It's a tough thing, and it's why we have a housing crisis. And, you know, I'll just give you an example. In Lafayette, over in our Silver Creek, you know, subdivision, we have triplexes, townhouse units that are triplexes, and they're around, you know, 1,100 square feet, so pretty similar to our 24-foot deep product. And, you know, those are going in the low fives. They started in the high threes. And so, our margin hadn't gone up at all in the last 3 years, and we had to raise them, $200,000 just to keep our margins, in place. And so that's sort of where the, inflationary times, come into effect.
Yep.
But, I think in Boulder County, when you talk about a unit in the 4s and 5s, that's attainable, I would say.
Absolutely.
You can look around and there's really not too many products out there that are in the 4s and 5s, unfortunately, in the county.
So 1,100 square feet, can you talk about the configuration of these houses and how many bedrooms we're talking about in the units, just to have an idea?
Yeah, they're, we have some flex space, so you can kind of create a bedroom here and there, but I would say mostly 3-bedroom is sort of what we're earmarking, this product.
There was something else I wanted to ask. Okay, I had some other questions about subdivision, but I'm going to hold off on that. I want to ask one more question about affordable housing. And maybe it's it's more of a comment than a question, because when I think, when I think about affordable housing, one of the real important factors with affordable housing is where it's located, right? Because it's important that it's located near services. It's important that it's located near transportation. And it's also important that people have access to schools, because one of the issues with affordable housing is if you put it someplace where it's not easy for people to get their kids to school, it's a problem. And that location happens to be, there's a bus that literally stops in front of the middle school. So, I guess I would like more data on, what the impact is. As you said, we'd have to raise the rest of the market value homes to cover that cost. And I guess if we're talking about 450,000, which is what we're allocating as a differential, if there's 38 units and 4 of them, I think, which is 12% about, end up being affordable, then you got 34 units to spread that differential. So I guess I'm trying to really understand what the fiscal impact is, because we have a decision to make as a council about whether or not to grant the fee in lieu.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any idea what percent of market value we're talking about adding to 34 units if 4 units were going to be affordable?
I don't have exact figures on me right now, but what we've seen in the past, we've done a lot of affordable housing in the city of Boulder over the years, and depending on if they're 60% AMI or 80% AMI, it sort of obviously heavily factors what you have to kind of recoup that. I would say on this project, why it's so important that we do request the cash in lieu is because not only do we have commercial, which, as I think is sort of common knowledge right now, is not doing well. So the commercial part is going to be sort of subsidized, and how we're going to try and get tenants into the commercial is we might have to explore kind of creative ways and lowering rents and doing out of the box thinking with our commercial properties. And so those are sort of subsidized units. And so then if we had affordable units compounding onto our commercial properties, then it's sort of a tough equation when you're talking about our market rate residential units, because we don't know right now about the commercial properties, and we want to put our best foot forward. We want to build our commercial because that's what we came through with our PUD. But I am fairly confident we're not going to get the rents we need to make those units pencil, and we're going to have to be sort of taking a bath on those commercial properties, which in the overall scheme has to be coming from somewhere. And if we had that compounded on top of the affordable units, that's where we get really concerned when looking at the pro forma for this project.
All right, any other questions? So,
Yeah.
Mr. Caleb, I'm sorry,
No worries.
I need to keep watching for you, Counselor Dickinson.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Maxine, I appreciate the the questions. I think it's really wonderful to hear how important affordable housing is to this council, and hope the applicants are hearing that as well. And I do appreciate a lot of things you just said around trying to balance, the profitability of commercial and residential, and the financing that you got is for market rate because you got it before our inclusionary zoning piece. I get all that. I'm curious, and I understand this may not work today as of now in this part of the project, but is it true that if you were able to say, build 45 units or 50 units instead of 38, if you had an ability to build more units on the same lot, that could make the affordable units pencil, right? If you got an extra 10 and 6 of them were affordable, it's just having 38 and having 6 of those or 5 of those 38 have to be affordable makes it very difficult. But if you're able to add 5 affordable housing on top of the 38 you're already making, is that a kind of recipe that allows you to add in affordable housing potentially?
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. I think, ultimately, when we're planning in preliminary and sketch plan, we can factor that in, and we can, create a land plan that supports that, and we can kind of pro forma that and incorporate that. When you come into sort of the final later stages, when we have, our financing organized and, our engineering done, then it's incredibly challenging. And, the density bonus, for affordable housing, I think is a great tool for, council members and planning board members to, think about. I just think it has to come at the right time. Otherwise, it's sort of a undue hardship on, an applicant, because we can't, pre-plan that and everything's sort of in place. But I do think, for future projects and, just looking, at the philosophical affordable housing, ways to make it work, I think density bonuses are a huge part of that, and I think they work really well. I would just say for this project, we would be going back to, sort of a concept type atmosphere to incorporate that. But yeah.
Yeah, I get we're a little late in the process. And then if you could just explain how you perceive the concurrency of this project. I understood it as Mayor Maloney was kind of laying out, and Rob as well, that you have a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 that's east to west, which in and of itself seems interesting to me. I mean, that you're building part of the residential and part of the commercial, and then you move forward from that. But then also that is it accurate that you cannot get your certificate of occupancy for your residential units until you've built and had inspected your foundations for commercial? Is that how you understand it within each phase? Like, so you can't move on to phase 2 until you've gotten that far in phase 1. How do you understand the concurrency piece of this development?
Yeah, I think working, with staff and, in 2017 with council, I think it's a creative solution to kind of a win-win for everybody. We have to pull a permit and do the foundation and obtain foundation approvals before we pull a residential permit. And so...
Oh, before the permit, not before certificate of occupancy.
Yeah. So
Thank you
we
for that
have to,
clarification.
we have to get the foundation in and backfilled and approved, and then we can, pull permits for residential, and then it's phased out so that, we can do, 3 buildings or so, and then we have to do another commercial building and get the foundation in and ready and, approved before we can then do the next 3 buildings. And so it's actually, works out well, because if we had to go, and obtain a CO for the commercial, that would take a year. And, we'd have a long infrastructure project and an expensive infrastructure project. And then we'd be paying interest on our, land and development loans while we were paying interest on our commercial vertical, building. And the thing that pays for all of that is the residential. And so we would be kicking out, closing on units for almost, 3 years because of how long, things are taking to build these days. So that would be sort of, would kind of turn our project upside down if we had to wait for that. But the way that it's written, we can get a foundation in the ground in, a month or two, and then we can start building concurrently, with our residential units so that we can, close on those residential units, use that money to pay for the next commercial building. And so that's sort of how this whole, phasing is worked out, is that, we know as a developer, and we've done mixed-use projects before, and the residential really does pay for the commercial. And so, we have to be closing residential units in order to kind of keep moving on to the next one. And so this works out where we're, closing on 3 or so buildings, taking those, and rolling that, revenue into another commercial building, and so on. And so I think that works out pretty well, and I think it guarantees, the, staff and council and the city that we're going to be fulfilling our obligations,
Okay,
building commercially.
One last question from Councilor Lay, and then we'll go on to public comment. Oh,
I have one as well.
2 comments, and then we'll move on to public comment.
Oh, I would love to hear what Councilman Hamilton might say.
So in the applicant's presentation, you discussed the type of units and moving from single family to multifamily in order to increase the number of attainable units. But I'd like to learn more about the townhome and duplex unit type, and what's the difference between that and multifamily, given that they're both medium density units, and why was that removed as well?
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna pull this up, but I can just talk about it. So we looked at our plan, and if you look towards the north, we have multifamily 12-plex structures, and that's, behind, our current proposed block. And so when you looked at the single family, we had, 6-plex multifamily, we had 12-plex multifamily, and we had, yeah, I don't know if we can, what is that? Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so here were our single-family homes over here. And over here, we have some 6-plexes, so which is sort of multifam, townhouse product. And then over here, we have 12-plexes. And we had this island of single-family homes, and it just didn't seem, congruous with the rest of the plan. And so, we had some multifam here, some townhouse here, and single-fam, and it just didn't fit. We were sort of looking at that single-family housing, thinking, being next to commercial here and commercial here, multifam and townhouse, it just didn't work. And I think, we sort of stubbed our toe on that. And so, looking at it again, we said, it makes much more sense, having a, townhouse product in here, because we have these, townhouses here and, 12-plexes here. And the 12-plexes are, a little too large, and we didn't really like the scalability of it. And so we didn't want those sort of looming, right on the commercial, but we felt like townhouses sort of had a good, step back. And so we have, our commercial, and then we have townhouses, and we didn't want to do, like 10-plex of townhouses, just more or less, just row homes going on, forever. And so we wanted to break them up, and we thought, fourplex, triplex, duplex, it's actually more expensive to build like that. But when you look at, the renderings, it just has a much nicer feel because each of those buildings has a different roof style. So it really breaks it up as you transition down the way. There's a gabled roof, a flat roof, a shed roof, and so it has a much more variety of product, which is sort of what we stand behind, is sort of a little more architectural variety as you move down the block.
So I just want to make sure we're on the same page because we flip-flop between the word multifamily and townhome in that one area.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand, what is the fundamental difference between a townhome and a multi-unit? And why did we shift to multi-unit entirely in that section?
Yeah, Sam can
Yeah.
address that.
Sam with land planner, so I've got a little more of the technical side of that. Essentially, the difference is that in the GDP we had different regulations for dimensional standards for multifamily versus townhomes, and how does that play out? And so, in order to improve that attainability solution, we wanted to shrink that footprint down, as we've been talking about. But the dimensional standards in the GDP wouldn't allow us to shrink that footprint down in the townhome category. So we make it all multifamily. We fit into that dimensional standard now. We're able to make more attainable units.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councilor Lay?
Yeah, one comment and then just a question. Actually, I want to interrupt this long enough to ask a question of staff. Thank you for explaining a little bit of the financing piece. I think sometimes my experience, having been on council for 10 years, or 10 years, almost that, maybe not that long. Just seems like that sometimes. That sometimes it's easy to forget a little bit in the moment how critical the financing is to the whole process, fundamental to the whole process. And I appreciate your explaining it. Doesn't mean that it's going to end up in a certain direction, but I think that does help us understand what the choices are and that you're reckoning with and how that works. I just want to make sure from staff standpoint, there was some discussion earlier about the phasing. I just want to make sure, I saw some heads nodding. I just wanted to make sure that with all respect to Mr. Markel's understanding of his own project, which I appreciate, I want to make sure that the staff is supportive of the interpretation he's giving it.
Yeah, I did have the PUD open as he was discussing that, and it looks like note 4 of the PUD on that cover sheet does address what he was speaking to. So based on that note, it looks like no residential building permits will be issued until completion and final inspection approval of the foundations for the commercial buildings are completed.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to public comment. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
So we'll take first round of public comments. Speakers limited to 3 minutes, and please tell us your name and if you are a Louisville resident. And I do have a card from Mark Cathcart.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, new City Council members, councillors, City Manager and staff. I'm Mark Cathcart. I live at 1763 Sweet Clover Lane, effectively the closest single-family home to this development. I want to be clear, notwithstanding the questions that I submitted in writing, we want this to be built. I was the former president of the North End Master HOA. I'm currently on the Architecture Review Committee. The lot is a mess. It's an eyesore for everyone to see that drives past. The applicant promised us all a vision which includes mixed-use commercial and residential nirvana. We all want this done, especially the residents. Otherwise, perhaps we should consider landmarking the construction trailer, porta potty, and shipping containers that have been there for 6+ years. I hadn't really considered a porta potty a community benefit when I bought my lot in 2014. I know that my neighbours adjacent to the development have concerns about lighting and parking and construction start and end times, and voiced those during the planning hearing. I hope that you had time to consider the comments that I sent in writing. I'm not a planning lawyer, but it does seem to me that if you replat the lots tonight, there's nothing to stop the applicant actually selling them separately or together. And I don't understand how your conditions would then be held. On behalf of North End Master HOA, we do appreciate the applicant accepting the request of the HOA to change the tree lawn planting. So in your deliberations tonight, thank you for your time and for your service to Louisville.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Looks like Jeff Gallard.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Mark, and thanks, everyone. I'm Jeff Gilliard. I live at 1813 Blue Star Lane, so very adjacent to this proposal as well. And just wanted to echo what Mark's saying is very much felt by the community. We thought this would be built, I guess we've been here coming up on 9 years like Mark. Pizza shops, Markel's offices, all sorts of things. We're gonna be here 6 years ago. I understand market conditions evolve. We know everyone wants housing, but we need this project to be built. And I think some of the ideas that some of you council members had early on around the COs, and I can understand the developer's position as well, but I guess I'm somewhat concerned we're going to get more residential units and then some foundations with weeds for perhaps for forever. So thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll come back to council questions, discussion. Councilor Hoffner.
Yeah, I appreciate all the thoughts around the phasing and the COs. I think this is a question for the applicant, which is, I think if I heard you, you would object on financing grounds to phasing the COs within a particular phase of the development, right? For phase one, you don't want to have to get the residential CO only after you get the commercial CO. But what about phasing the COs between phases such that you have to complete all of phase one before you can get the residential CO for phase two? Does that change the math at all?
Please.
Yeah, so, as staff pointed out, us obtaining, a foundation in the ground, we can't just go, sell that to somebody. We can't, have that working for us. And so, if we put a foundation in the ground, we paid for a permit, which is, a huge, one of the largest line item, in probably this building. We're going to be, working as fast as we can to, build that building so that we can, hopefully, get some tenants in there or, sell the building or what. But we're also going to be building out the, residential. And those speeds are different, like if you look at some of the, larger buildings for the, commercial, it's a pretty, large footprint. And, going from a duplex product and trying to time it out so that we're not sitting for 4 months waiting for a CO for the, commercial product, I think would be sort of disingenuous, to say, yeah, we can sort of try and time it where, we get this commercial building going and we get it, to, drywall, and then we, start a duplex to sort of try and time it out, that I think would be, sort of almost an undue hardship on us trying to make that work with timing COs together.
So just sort of taking that in reverse, is it then sort of a fair expectation that there's a world in which residential phases 1 and 2 are complete, but there's still no CO for commercial phase 1?
No, I think we can't build the next, residential phase without an additional commercial, building under construction. So we can't start the next phase without, additional building. So we could have like a blended thing going where, we're finishing up the first commercial building and we're finishing up the first tranche of, residential houses. But then we can't pull another residential building without springing and pulling a permit and putting a foundation in the ground for the next. So it's sort of what you're saying is sort of built into the whole equation of phasing, where we can't start the next phase of residential housing in phase 2 without having the phase 2 commercial building foundation already in the ground and approved. And so then we're going to be building out phase 2 as we're building, the phase 2 commercial building, and we can't start, phase 3 without putting in, a third building, and so it's sort of already built in there, but it would almost be, sort of suicide for us to sit there and build, 3 commercial buildings, and just be sitting on foundations while we're building, residential. That we can't, we don't have the money, and you have to obtain, the loans, so talking about sort of financing and how this all works is, we have to obtain a loan in order to build a commercial building, and we have to obtain a loan in order to build the residential buildings. And so if we're having a loan, it has time commitments on it. So we can't just, stop building this residential building. Otherwise, the bank's going to come and say, you have to pay for the entire thing because you guys haven't, been building fast enough. And you've just been sitting on this building. And they want, their interest to sort of kick off. And, the interest, accumulates over time. And so, they're not just going to let us put a foundation in the ground and sort of hold off. They want us to, keep building, and they, most of these commercial buildings turn into sort of a mini perm. And so, you get financing to go vertical with the building, and then that turns into a permanent mortgage on the building. And in order to obtain a permanent mortgage on the building, you have to have tenants and you have to have certain things in place. Otherwise, they're not going to let you build a second building. So, we can't just go out and build 3 buildings, and, out of our pocket. They're going to have loans associated with it. And those loans, they're not going to say, oh, you have a completed building, that has no tenants in it, or it's not even finished. Yeah, let's build another one and another one. So, we have to sort of go by the book, and it's already sort of built into that equation.
Sure. So I don't want to belabor this for too long, but I think if I just heard you right, the commercial in phase 1 is all but guaranteed to be tenant occupied by the time you're starting phase 2 commercial, for which you have to pour a foundation before you can start residential construction.
Yeah, and I mean, if we have, tenants lined up and our residential's going well, I mean, it's all market dependent. But then, yeah, maybe we, build the next building, and we're building the next second, commercial building, and then we're starting to build, the second round of, residential buildings in conjunction. And that's sort of the ticket to all of this is, we're sort of, it's an evolving process of, putting this foundation in, putting these foundations in, getting these sold, putting that foundation in, and then building the next ones and getting them sold. But we can't go past, phase 1 without building the commercial for phase 2.
Great, thank you. I think you answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you. Counselor Dickinson.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is, there's so many things that I like about this project right now. Kind of go through some boxes that we need to check. We haven't even talked about the lighting, but that's always a hot button issue, and I think you guys have done a really good job with the lighting, and full cutoff lighting is fantastic. The landscaping, you know, you've really done a good job of listening to the feedback and improving the landscaping, and that's something that always comes up with these buildings. The trees, same thing. We're not even talking about these things because, or we haven't yet, because I think you've done such a good job with it. The EV parking is in here as well. So again, a big hot button issue that we're not talking about because it's just there and you're not asking for any variances. The easements make total sense to me. The changing of the easements and partial vacations makes sense considering what you changed. I'm really happy with the concurrency, and I just want to thank staff. I know this is complicated to be working with a developer and try to figure this out, and I think you guys have found a really good balance of allowing them to be financially feasible and get through the project while also holding them accountable to build the commercial concurrently. And I think that's been such a big issue for Louisville and every community. It's hard. I mean, the truth is, right, once you finish building the residential, there isn't a lot of incentive for the developer to keep going and build the unprofitable commercial piece. And so from your investor, it's just difficult to get that last part. So, you know, us forcing the issue on you also makes it so that you do those things in an order that works. I'm really happy with this concurrency plan and hope it's a model for the future. The density I'm fine with. The height waivers, you know, you're talking 1 or 2 feet, you know, 24 inches on a 40-foot building. You're not asking for additional story or 15 feet. And again, I think it's very creative, the different heights of different buildings, and I think it adds to the aesthetics of the space. So I'm fine with the height waiver. And then the affordable housing piece, you know, it wasn't in the packet, or I couldn't find it in the packet. So I'm really happy now to see in the presentation the number of $463,000. $500,000, if you don't mind me rounding up, is a lot of money. I have to say that is a lot of money that I am excited about how Louisville can use $500,000 to jumpstart affordable housing, or as I said, even re-engage in this project. As these homes are built, the city has an opportunity to potentially purchase and then control and then sell some of these market value spaces. So I think that's, and again, as an example, buy it for $500 and then, you know, restrict it and sell it for $400. That only costs us $100,000. So we can do that 4.5 times if those numbers play out. So I'm comfortable. That was kind of my sticking point coming into the meeting, is how is this affordable housing and fee in lieu going to work? And I'm okay with turning to my my residents and saying, hey, you know, we didn't get affordable housing in here, but because of our inclusionary zoning ordinance, we're getting $500,000 for affordable housing. And I promise as a council member to use that and to figure out how to use that maybe after our housing study, but certainly to use this money. So I'm really happy as I go through each of my boxes that things are being met, and that it seems that this developer and our staff have done a really good job working with the community, working with the planning department, and getting to a product here at this stage that is really easy for me to say yes to. I'm curious to hear as other counselors communicate their stance. Anything I'm missing, I'm really excited about it, but I'm open to any concerns that any of my colleagues have. But that's it for me, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Most.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, Councilmember Dickinson. I have one question, and then I have a potential condition that I'd like to suggest, and I don't know if it's even feasible. The first question is, if we approve subdividing this property, can you then sell off pieces of it? Is there anything preventing you from selling off pieces of it?
No, no, there's nothing, preventing us from selling this off, but, just being in Boulder County for 50 years, we, and looking back at North End as a whole, we have always put our best foot forward. If you talk to our residents, we're a major, part of the HOAs. We partake in everything. We have a really robust warranty program, and, really strive in all of our communities, 50 years ago, up until now, to sort of build that out and build the value as we go. And, if you look at North End, it's a perfect example of, us adhering to our design guidelines, pushing, our design envelope and really, not just doing cookie cutter housing and really, building, the subdivision out in a creative and design driven way so that, we don't want to just, because we could have done that, this last 20 years in North End. We could have sold a phase to a national home builder, but, we don't. And that's not how we operate. And I think that's why, being a local builder and not being some big national, developer or builder, that's, I think, where you can trust us with that is we never do that. And that's sort of what we stake our reputation on.
All right. Well, you also made some comments during the Planning Commission about how you hope to have flexibility on those commercial buildings. So if the market didn't warrant commercial development, there was, I don't remember the exact words, but there was some flexibility. And so I'm just a bit concerned because we see that traditionally, and we're hearing from you the complexity of putting commercial buildings in and the financing and all the rest of it. So I just want to make sure, because the vision of this community from the get-go was that we were going to have retail service in the neighborhood that people could walk to. And so that's a concern for me. And the other concern too, and this is one of my dead horses I beat on a regular basis, is I'm concerned about the construction of the commercial space, in terms of how you're envisioning those spaces. Are you envisioning, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square foot commercial spaces, or have you designed this in a way where you can accommodate smaller businesses? Because I think providing the kind of services that people think about are like a coffee shop or a laundry or, something like that, where, people have that, or, a little shop, whatever, people have that accessibility. And, I just am wondering in terms of how you guys are, envisioning these commercial developments, if it can accommodate that kind of business, because I think that's an important component of business in our community.
Yeah, definitely. No, and I think, just, sort of protecting ourselves and our investment and our brand, we design these commercial buildings to be flexible. And so, it's, fairly popular in the commercial development world where, you don't want to have a building, that just supports a, 20,000 square foot user. We have it so that if somebody wants to take 5,000 square feet, they can do that. If somebody comes in and they want to take, 2,500 square feet, they can do that.
What about like 500 or 1,000 square feet? Because one of the things I did notice that I like, sorry, I'm having so much trouble with this microphone tonight. In terms of what appeared to me the design was that there were a lot of windows, right? And what I had a retail business at one point. What I know about small retail is you need windows, right? And so when I see a building that has a lot of windows, in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, you could put, multiple types of business. And that's really my concern, because I think, we have a lot of larger business spaces vacant in this community, but we don't have small business spaces vacant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we're sort of looking, and we sort of design those buildings with some verticality in mind so that, there's, sort of this 25-foot wide sort of expressed piece has a window, and we can put a partition in there, and they have egress, and they have access to, common bathrooms and whatnot.
Right,
So
'cause-
yeah, we have that factored in.
So that I think
And-
is fantastic. That's really great.
Yeah, and we're definitely still talking about co-working space, and we're sort of pursuing all avenues when it comes to the commercial space, because it is sort of a
Right.
little bit of a question mark right now.
And co-working space also is supported by those smaller types of businesses, right? That
Yeah.
kind of, I think that's the kind of amenities that our community is looking for and expects. And I want to make sure that, that there's the possibility for that to happen. So, and we can certainly talk about, support for business development in that. So the thing that I wondered about, and when Councilmember Dickinson was making his comments about even potentially having the idea, maybe we could use the money that we get in lieu to buy units to create affordable housing. I'm wondering if it's possible, and I don't know, this just came into my head, I don't know if it's even legally possible or if it's something people would entertain, but would be the idea of having a right of first refusal on some units so that we would have that option to think about creating affordable units. And again, I don't know if we have any vehicle to do it. I don't know if it's possible, but maybe this is something we have to think about in the affordable housing study. But I just think it's such an ideal location for affordable housing. It has so many of the easy amenities that make that kind of housing. And I understand from a financial perspective saying, well, having affordable housing in this 38 unit development may not make fiscal sense, but it certainly, like from my perspective, makes a lot of community sense. So just something to throw out. I don't know if anybody legally from the city to community development, is that even an idea that we can entertain?
Let me address that. So what we have in front of us is these ordinances and resolution.
Right.
And what you're bringing up is something that we absolutely need to talk about. I think we want the housing study to inform us. The idea of fee in lieu is something that I support in this particular situation because, we have something that the developer, the applicant came in with something that they brought us in 2017, and now they're moving ahead with that. And it has what they call attainable housing, what I call workforce housing. And so there's a lot of really positives about this, but the questions you have are good. I don't think this is the
It's
forum.
appropriate, yeah,
But they're questions that need to be part of our housing study, they need to be part of, what do we do with the $463,000? Well, for me, I said, let's go buy some real estate. This is an approach, I'm talking about land, this is an approach that cities around us have taken and then worked with our housing partners at the county and the state and federal and potentially a developer who would do both market rate and affordable type of, so that they can afford it and we can get funding to do it. So there are a lot of ideas, but this isn't the time really to sort of hash all it out because what we're looking at is a couple ordinances and a resolution based upon this one today. So I think you're making good points, but I really haven't made any comments. I was one that forced the provisions, if you remember, back in 2017, and you have a plan, and I think they were well crafted by staff, so thank you for that, because the intention really was to make sure that commercial got developed. We had other sites where that didn't happen. And so now we have a provision in place. You fully understand it. You have a strategy to build out phase by phase. So I think that makes sense. With regard to the change in types of units, I like what you've done. A product that's $300,000 to $500,000 is attainable for some of the workforce who work for the city or potentially the school district or the fire district. That's good. We need that. That is a housing need as well as affordable housing. So I do like those changes that you made. The height things they're very minor waivers, and I think they're important, especially given the geography you're dealing with and landscaping you're dealing with. And the fee in lieu, this is something I actually like this idea. We've done it with parking in lieu, and we've invested that in real estate to build more parking downtown. So this is something that city has done, and it's just something that city council needs to know that we have we have money to help try to solve this issue. And when we have the housing study, maybe we'll understand what those tools are. But this is something that I believe fits the need of the community, and I'll be looking forward to supporting it. Any other comments before we go to the second round of public comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm really like both the idea of a density bonus and Councilwoman Most, your idea of a right of first refusal type option, and I look forward to discussing those when we're sitting more in our legislative capacity than quasi-judicial. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else before we go to the second round of public comment? I looked at you, Councilor Dickinson. All right, let's go to the, thank you.
All right,
Let's
thank
go
you,
to the
councilors.
second round of public comments. Any public comments? Looks like none. So we're gonna close the public hearing. And do we have any motions or actions, Councilor Lay?
I guess a comment and then a motion. I guess first, this is a really important piece of property for our city. You know it, and we know it. There aren't many places where we can, or where are going to be built brand new housing, or particularly. And so the decision that's made on this is, I think, pretty critical. I appreciate the incredible work that staff has done. I mean, this is a long haul. This is a long haul because I know because I represent that ward and I've talked with people for years about how that, when that, what is going to go there in that place, has been important for everybody. So it's coming closer to fruition, and I think that's, as an aside, I think it's good. I think a second point is I can't help but feel somewhat wistful that we weren't in a position to be perhaps a little more flexible about doing density bonuses at a different time, because that obviously is something that might have made actual affordability possible right here in a way that it's going to be just more challenging. I think the criteria for each of these, the two ordinances and the resolution, are met based on the information that we have. And I think a fee in lieu makes a lot of sense here. One, just again, an item about that we should remember is that this is part of what, when we entered into discussions with the entire county about the percentage of affordable housing we were going to agree to be responsible for. This was, it was by hook or crook, and there are a lot of different ways to get that, and this is, the fee in lieu is definitely one of those. So I support that, and I think that the waivers that are being asked for are just fine, and I applaud the patience and the skill with which everybody has worked together. So I would move for passage of ordinance number 1846, Series 2022, an ordinance approving Fourth Amendment to North End General Development Plan to amend allowed residential uses on Planning Area 1 and standards for roof overhang encroachments within setbacks and easements for Block 11.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hefner?
Yes.
Councilmember Most?
Yeah.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fahey?
Yes.
Mayor Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion on ordinance 1847. Council Lay?
Let me just find it again. Sorry about that. Yes, I move for passage of ordinance number 1847, Series 2022, an ordinance approving partial vacation of 6 portions of an exclusive city utility easement on Block 11 of the North End, Block 11, replat of North End Parcel 1, Outlot H and Outlot K replat subdivision.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hefner?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Mayor Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Most?
Yes.
All right, so do we have
I'll
any?
make a motion.
Yes. Thank you.
I move
Thank
that we
you.
approve resolution number 6, series 2023, a resolution approving a planned unit development amendment and a final plat for the amended subdivision agreement for a mixed-use development consisting of 38 residential units and 40,562 square feet of commercial development at Block 11 of North End.
Second.
Thank you for jumping in there, Councilor Dickinson. You read them better than
So
anybody
excited.
else. All right, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hefner?
Yes.
Mayor Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Most?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. All 3 motion pass. We'll move on to the next item, discussion direction, options for 2023 Independence Day celebration.
Sorry, Mayor, I was thinking you were going to take a break.
Do you want a break? All right, do you mind if we take a break? All right, we'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you. All right, we'll call the meeting back to order with the discussion direction options for the 2023 Independence Day celebration.
Okay. Hello, thank you, Mayor, council members. I appreciate it. My name is Erica Schmidt. I'm the Arts and Events Program Manager for the city here. To give you some background, in 2022, the city resumed its traditional Independence Day celebration after 2 years of modified events due to COVID. We're coming to the council today to request direction for the 2023 Independence Day celebrations. In recent years, we've seen that many communities that regularly experience drought or risks of fire have revised their traditional fireworks celebrations in favor of non-pyrotechnic experiences. There are many options for Independence Day celebrations, and we've brought 4 options for council's consideration. You'll find the full details in your packet. The first option is to continue our traditional celebration with fireworks, a concert band, and a large gathering at the golf course. Our second option is to celebrate with fireworks that are shot off from a part of the city that is at a higher elevation, allowing the community to potentially view the show from different parts of the city. A third option is that instead of fireworks, to have a drone light show held at the golf course. The drone show would not have the same explosive sounds and rapid fire shapes as a fireworks show, but could be programmed to have bright images and animations that could be customized to include images and slogans that are meaningful to the city. We would still have a concert band performing patriotic music and crowds would come together, but the light show would be drones rather than fireworks. Our fourth option is to hold an afternoon celebration designed to bring the community together during daylight so neighbors can see and chat with each other and kids will have energy to celebrate. The event would include entertainment for all ages, interactive games, and patriotic music and performances to enjoy. Regardless of the option that City Council chooses, we do need to book vendors immediately in order to assure that they are available for the holiday. I appreciate your time and look forward to your recommendations for 2023.
Any questions to Erica? Yes, Councilor Lay.
Thanks. I had a question about what outreach, if any, staff has done yet to groups of fire survivors. Part of that is just a concern, I think, generally about, some folks, I think, have expressed concern in the past with sort of re-traumatizing with the sounds and whatnot. But I think also, and maybe almost, well, just as importantly, even for those who don't have the kind of association, the trauma association with it, just the idea of getting people back to Louisville. I know that's one of the last option is an express kind of get together in Community Park. But I know that there are meetings generally that staff's having with groups of fire survivors, and I just wonder whether that has come up. That may be a question for you, that may be a question for the city manager. I'm just interested in that aspect of it. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of anecdotal information out there. Just like any other community, there's people that love fireworks. I believe it's patriotic. It's an important part of a tradition. There's also people who are traumatized for various reasons, concerned about fire, and those type of things. And then there's the middle in terms of people that are less vocal. We have not done any, unless you guys have done. Okay, we haven't done any kind of formal surveying. I've had some conversations. Erica and Sharon have heard from people that have stopped in the library. I can let you guys talk about that. But I've heard both sides of the spectrum, and it's really just, we had this conversation informally last year and pretty quickly concluded that it was really important for us to bring something normal, something that people could relate to, that had history, that they had history with, 6 months after the Marshall Fire. So we moved forward with it. And gosh, all of a sudden, here we are in February, and it's time to make some decisions. So we're coming to you, albeit without a whole lot of data or firm information like you're asking for. But I think it's an important conversation to have before we start investing in staff resources and contracts and those type of things. Do you guys want to talk about the people stopping in the library after?
Yeah,
after the
so we
event?
did hear from some direct communication, people who came to the library, and I think you also got some emails last year after 4th of July. And we know that we normally more hear from people who are upset and didn't appreciate that we did pyrotechnics last year after we had a fire, and people who are just generally concerned about wildfire risk with ongoing drought, and also some debris falling and that kind of thing. So I think what we're looking for is kind of how do we resolve the tension between those two competing values, people who really love this tradition. It's been a tradition in Louisville, I think it's almost 20 years now, and this idea that a lot of communities are kind of moving away from the pyrotechnics that can, cause wildfires and that kind of thing. So we did hear from people last year, and we also saw on social media, I think, and that's always kind of a casual way to monitor how people are feeling about things. But we did hear quite a bit of negative feedback.
Yes,
Just
city manager?
one other piece, though, there were a lot of people there at the event that enjoyed the event, too. And I don't know if we have a number on that, but there were a lot of people that actually were there and enjoyed the event. So it's good. Sorry.
No, thank you for adding that. I have a comment, and then I'll hand it off to Councilor Most. So I guess it's really more of a question. You talked about timing, and so as we look at these 4 options that are before us, if we continue what we've done in the past, when will we have to sign a contract to do that? Because I'm wondering, from our policy standpoint, do we have to do that today? Do we have to do that by May? I mean, what is the time frame we're dealing with? Because it seems like the first 2, maybe the first 3, all have a time on them.
Yes. So were we to continue with fireworks, we do have an existing relationship with a vendor who has granted us grace in light of their longstanding relationship with us. I do believe that in previous years we have to pay at least in half by April. So having selected the product, knowing how many fireworks, what type of fireworks and such in March.
All right, thank you. My other question is the whole thing of risk, and I see that our fire chief is here. May I call upon you to come up and talk to us? No, he's. Well, so my question, thank you for.
Oh, there it is. Better. Thank you. So to talk about risk, so we're a neutral party. So if you have it or not, we're just going to be neutral, but we're here to protect the citizens. And over the 20 years that we've been doing it, we've got a really good track record. You pick a very good vendor to shoot them off for number one, and that's probably the most important because they're the experts when it comes to fireworks. We have conditions that have to be met at that night, and maybe even leading up to that point. Drought. So a number of years ago, it was really, really, really dry, and I think we decided to cancel that night and maybe postpone it of a couple days. We look at wind. If it's greater than 20 miles an hour, then we call it off and we reschedule or we just cancel it completely. The last thing probably, and the golf course does a really good job of this, and that is it reduces the risk because they water the lawn, the grass, and everywhere around it where we shoot it really well, that when some of the embers do fall down, and there is debris, so it's the fireworks, it's an explosion that comes down to the ground. But a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, all the time, the embers have fallen and it's just gone out. We also walk the perimeters. We will make sure the vendor walks the perimeters and stuff. And then we have police officers and other volunteers walking around to make sure that everything is secure before we leave for the night.
Thank you. Any other questions for the fire chief?
Yeah, I have a question. So we have, the first two options are shooting them off from the golf course or maybe the rec center. Is there a difference in risk between those locations?
So this is the first time I've heard tonight about the rec center. But looking and knowing the area, I think we could probably find a pretty good area that's safe to do it, I guess would be the point. There's less irrigation, and I'd have to talk to Parks and Rec, and maybe Public Works would know better about that area in the arboretum, or the areas lower to the lower portion, the south side of the rec center. That's where I'm thinking. So it would probably shoot them off in the parking lot and let them float down. But there's normally a western wind, so that's what normally at night it kind of starts floating toward the east, basically. So the rec building and some of the land around the rec center is watered very well, so I think it would be fine. We could maybe even move it over closer to the police station, but I think what they're looking for is elevation, so somewhere where most of the city could watch it. So, but I still have to work all that through still, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Mose?
Yeah, I just want to say that, Chris, were you there? Yeah, I think you were there. We were serving hot dogs last year at the celebration. There were a lot of people, and there were a lot of people really happy that we were doing this. So I'm sure there are people who, prior to the fire, would have been unhappy. There are always people that complain about it. And I think, I guess I think about this something that's, this is some of my fondest childhood memories are going to the 4th of July and fireworks. And interestingly, in the town I grew up in, they used to have a circus, God, with animals. I mean, you wouldn't even think about doing that now in the morning. And then they had like an afternoon family event where they brought those horrible rides in again, which, carnival rides, scary stuff. But we kind of had an all-day thing. So we had different kinds of events for different kinds of people. But I mean, for me personally, I just think this is something that I'm 61 years old. I remember fireworks my whole life, and I know things change, but I guess it's one of those traditions I really enjoy, and I don't know how we balance it, because I don't think we have a really good sense, or do we have just a really small number of people who are really, have an issue with it? Do we have a majority of the community that really wants to do this? I think it's kind of tough to try to make this decision representing our community when we don't really have the information except anecdotal, which is like, yeah, there were a lot of people there last year. So,
any more questions before we go to public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to say that I also have been going to the fireworks every year since I was very, very young, and I enjoy them. Also, having lost my home in the fire, I still went to the fireworks last year. I look forward to them every year. I know the fire department does an excellent job making sure that we're not setting them off if there's any kind of risk, and then making sure that it's wet and they're controlled. I would be in favor of adding an event at Community Park during the day, but I at least think that we should do some kind of survey or public outreach to the whole community to find out what percentage of people do or do not want the fireworks. Because as the city manager was saying, all we've heard is anecdotal things. And so I'd like to find out what the residents would like to see.
Councilor Lay?
I think that's a great idea, Mayor Pro Tem. But I don't know how we can do that. One, we want to do it, I think, if we do it. in a timely way, and two, that we don't spend a huge amount of money, which would sort of reduce the amount of money potentially would be available to do anything like that. I guess one of my observations is I don't know, my initial reaction to number two is, oh my gosh, because it's just so close to houses that are being rebuilt. And I can't imagine if I were rebuilding a house right there and that would just, even if the risk were next to zero, that I wouldn't be freaked out about that. But, you know, that's not me, that's just my projection of my own neurosis. And it may be not what people feel actually happens. So I like the idea of having an event. I'm not sure it's necessary to have an event. I'm trying to remember how we did this. You know, when we did it last year, we did combine them. I mean, we had an event at the golf course, and that, you know, it's still going to cost more than just simply buying fireworks. But, you know, I think if we were able to, you know, to find the money, which is something we haven't really talked about, then we've got $30,000 that we've allocated to it. But I appreciate the Mayor Pro Tem's suggestion, and I would request that we take number two just off the group. Or we poll on it, but I can tell you I'm not terribly thrilled about it.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any public comments. Oh. Yeah, and Councilor Dickinson just raised his hand. I will get to you after public comment.
Hi, I'm Cindy Bedell. I live at 662 West Willow. And I was just listening to this discussion, and I was wondering, have there ever been any fires caused by the Louisville fireworks? So I guess that's a question.
Well, the answer's behind you.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, he said not to my knowledge. So, and secondly, I really look forward to the hot dogs. So I hope you have it.
Thank you. Looks like that's all the public comments. So, oh no, we have Sherry Summer.
Good evening, council members. Sherry Summer, 910 South Palisade Court. I'd like to consider the drone option, the light show. Could we consider having the traditional festivities with, you know, people getting together and all of the traditional things that we normally have? And then, because I've heard so many concerns from community members, like, you know, the firecrackers scare animals, they scare pets, they disturb wildlife. I mean, there's the perception of danger, even if there may be no danger to real firecrackers. There's also a perception of danger, so I'd just like you to consider that option. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any other public comments. No other public comments. Councilor Dickinson.
I think this is a perfect initiation for Barbara and Dietrich. I think the two of them alone should have to decide whether or not we're canceling the fireworks or traumatizing all of our fire.
You know, excuse me, I'm facilitating the meeting, not you.
So, you know, I really appreciate everyone's comments so far. I think this is such a tough thing. It was funny as I was going to bed last night for you. I asked my wife, I'm like, all right, babe, what do you think? Fireworks or no fireworks? She's like, oh, it's so tough, right? And so I think what we have certainly is a community that's torn, and we have a council that's torn, that the fireworks show it's once a year. It is a national holiday. It is a significant event. It is something that many, 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 many people love and enjoy, and lots of people hate. I mean, my dogs would freak out at fireworks. And so, you know, you add on to some obvious issue. I mean, what are we doing? We're putting up pyrotechnics in the air and blowing things up, and then the debris is falling on our neighborhood. Like that's crazy. Why would we do that? So it is an interesting tradition, but it is the tradition that I think last year we talked about, rebuilding our communities. A huge part of that is community gatherings and bringing people together. And I think one of the reasons we did go through with it last year, which was a more intense year when it comes to fire survivors, was because we weighed the community benefit of having this tradition carry on, and it had been, we hadn't done it through COVID, so it's just so tough. And what I just want, I guess, what I want to acknowledge is that that it's a beautiful thing of local government, right? Is that no one here doesn't care about the people that don't want this to happen and may be traumatized by it and unhappy with doing it. That it really is important to us, and nobody wants to just cancel it because they don't care. Like it's a tough thing, and there's no right answer in the sense that, of course, either way we go, we're going to upset a great amount of people. And I think that's the tough thing, that if we're able to do a survey, a reliable survey, fast enough to get the results, fast enough to get to a meeting to make a decision about it, I'd be blown away, and it'll be super expensive. And we're going to find out that of our 20,000 residents, maybe 10% reply, 15% reply. So, 2,000 people, 500 are going to be very upset with the decision we end up making. And so I don't know that it's going to help a ton. Now, I mean, yeah, I think if you know which side that 500, if it's very lopsided, then maybe it's helpful. I just don't think with the timing it's gonna work out very well. So, I think I probably fall on the side of doing the fireworks. But this is one of those examples, and Barbara and Dietrich, welcome to council with Caleb. But I really don't. I'm okay going either way here. I'm okay being swung by any of you. My opinion here is I think we should probably go forward with the fireworks. I won't be upset, and I'll even vote the opposite of that opinion if the majority is going that way. And I will concur that the number 4 got me so excited. I'm just like, what a great event. We should absolutely add that to 4th of July. It's a day off from school. It's a wonderful day to be celebrating, and a wonderful day to be adding as many different cool, fun things to do. So I love the idea of number 4, and I would probably lean on sticking with number 1, but really excited to hear more comments from you guys and go with the way the wind is blowing here in the group.
Thank you, Councilor Dickinson. Councilor Hoffner.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate the presentation and everyone's comments so far. I think I share Councilman Dickinson's skepticism that we will get a survey done fast enough and at a reasonable cost, and with enough participants to really learn a lot more than we know right now. I also think Councilman Lay's point is well taken about the homes near the rec center, and sort of the adjacency there and the optics. I would just want to add to that and recognize that there were many, many homes burned down adjacent to and on the golf course, very close to where we shoot the fireworks off. So I think that's probably a concern or something that we should recognize about both places. I personally would find myself leaning in favor of the sort of history and tradition, and the things the Mayor Pro Tem pointed out, that this is important to a lot of people, and it's childhood memories, and brings the community together. And I recognize there are some who really don't like it and have fair reasons and thoughtful reasons for not liking it. But the large crowds at the fireworks, I think, are an important part of our community. And then I would just also add that I personally love the idea of the day event, if we could find a way to look into that, whether that's next year or in the future. But I think that could be an added part of our tradition.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Yes.
So I appreciate the discussion and the recognition of the residents in Ward 3 as well, being close to the golf course. It sounds to me that between the 2 locations proposed for traditional fireworks, the golf course area is one that would reduce the risk the most. It's it's my understanding that the public fireworks show is in part put to reduce the risk of residents lighting fireworks in the neighborhoods. So I have a question. I have two questions. What we do this year does not lock us into future years with the vendor, right? It's a year-to-year renewal? Okay, yes. And then how many times, we've talked about risk of fire from the fireworks, and there's also risk of fire with residents lighting their own fireworks. So how many times in the past have the public fireworks been canceled due to drought?
To my knowledge, just once, but I've only been here for 10 years, so, but once.
Once for drought, or twice for drought, and once for budget in the last 25 years.
And once for rain.
They were postponed once for rain, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm going to weigh in. Thank you, staff, for putting this together. I think it's it's a good thing for us to consider. Like my fellow counselors, you know, I've enjoyed this. You know, my family's enjoyed this community. I live where I can see them fairly easily. The idea of a higher location, I'm glad the fire chief is with us. Thank you for giving us your counsel and advice. So I think that's a no-go. The drone idea, I was intrigued by that when I first heard it, but $40,000 for 10 minutes of drone lights doesn't seem like a good buy. But the fourth option about a community event, I think that's something that we should consider for next year as a companion to doing the fireworks. So if I was to give direction tonight, and I guess I'd like to see where everybody else is this, but I would give direction to staff to go with option 1 for 2023. Any thoughts on that? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Please, Councilor Most.
I would just say, let's go with the traditional option. And if there's any way we can find a way to do something during the day that's, you know, very family and young kiddish friendly, that I don't know if we can do a both and, if it's possible from a budget standpoint, but I would love it if our city manager could see if he could do some magic and figure out a way to do it. If it really isn't reasonably affordable, then I would say I would agree with you.
Yeah, we love magic and we love making good things happen, and especially around this. I've been listening to the conversation with a little bit of like, I hope they don't think this is can we pick all of them or just one of them? Because the budget right now wouldn't accommodate both of those, but that could be amended and addressed. But it's a bigger issue, I think, of staff resources and our ability to actually pull off those things well. And if we're going to do them, we need to do them well. So I would appreciate the mayor's suggestion of a target or a goal of trying to put something like that together for next year, so we have time to think about that more thoroughly. I think we could also spend the course of this year looking at some ways that we can collect more data around what people really feel about this, so that you have a more data-informed decision to consider for next year. And I also, there's a lot of other things event-wise that we're looking at in terms of capacity. So maybe we can get creative, and maybe there's a way we can, add a little bit. But we'll have to sit down and roll up our sleeves on that one. If you would give us that opportunity to do that, that'd be great. And then also the hot dogs was mentioned. That was something that we did last year specific to the fire. It really added a lot to the staff resources to pull this off. So just for clarity, I'm not anticipating that we would do that unless that's something that's really important. Again, it's just a matter of staff resources and the ability to do what we need to do well and do it right. So.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, on the whole idea of the food, in the past, we have had it sometimes, we've had food trucks come in and they provide the food and the staffing and all of that. So that would be a way to have an event. We also had at least one year, because I brought my grandson, where we had the police and the fire departments each had trucks and cars, and fire chief was there, the police chief was there, and the kids loved that.
I thought you were going to say that the fire and police were going to grill hot dogs, and that's not going to happen, at least.
Maybe,
because
maybe.
there's still a little tension, if you don't know, between police and fire around some recent events. Thank you, Councilmember Dickinson,
And I
for
think
that.
I think they have other things they should be doing during that time.
Yeah.
So,
We might be able to get touch a truck or something like that. We might be able to pull some things together like that pretty. So we'll talk about that too.
all right, Councilor Hamilton.
So I just have two last comments. One, if we do end up collecting data from the community to present next year for consideration, I would also love to see data about the environmental impact of traditional fireworks. It is high up on our work plan to reduce our carbon footprint and make environmentally conscious choices. So I would like more data surrounding that for next year. And the other comment I have is I do really like the idea of exploring an option for downtown during the day. It'll increase foot traffic to our local businesses and might resolve the whole hot dog bugaboo, because people can eat and support our local businesses before going to also participate in the golf course activities as well. That's all.
Thank you. And I would prefer that we don't have this conversation next year, but that we have it September, October, somewhere in there, or July 5th, Erica's saying. Maybe not quite then, but July 6th.
So do you want to tell us what you think direction we've given you? So we
Sure
can
thing.
all.
Sure thing. What I'm hearing is we go forward with the traditional fireworks event at the golf course, as has been done in the past, without the hot dogs. We'll explore some options for things like touch a truck or some of those type of things. We'll explore our current capacity to potentially add some kind of day events to this. I think we'll talk to the chamber about some downtown things that we might be able to collaborate with them on. We'll work on a plan to pull together some data for you as far as what the community feelings really are and what the environmental impacts are of this. And we'll come back sometime in third quarter-ish to do a debrief and think about 2024. And I'm glad this is recorded.
That was very good. Councilor Lay.
I think you forgot the part about keeping the police and the fire people as far away from them, one another and dodgeballs as possible, notwithstanding anything that Councilmember Dickinson has to say about this.
I think I've lost control of the
No,
meeting.
one last thing, actually, more seriously, is just that in all of the attempt to sort of involve, I think it's great to think about involving some of the businesses in this and helping with that. I don't, in a little cross-ward cooperation, I think we should not forget the other parts of the city that have commercial stuff. In fact, in McCaslin area, there's some restaurants that probably could benefit from that too, and they're within walking distance of the golf course. So I'm sure you will tie this up in a bow in a nice way.
Good point.
Quick comment?
One last comment.
You know what? We could talk about that, with the EVC, too, Chris. Sorry. And you know what I mean? As part of a programmatic approach to, we have the Saturday shopping thing. So anyway, let's put that on the EVC budget.
All right, the last comment will be Councilor Dickinson.
Mayor, I would just respectfully request that you think about writing something to the public about our decision. I think it would be really good coming from the mayor. So in your monthly newsletter or what have you, to just kind of address this, and that, there aren't a lot of people tuning into council meetings at this point. And so, understanding that it isn't just what's the big deal? We're doing the fire, but that, we really thought about it, and we do care a lot about the potential negative impact for some people, and I just think it'd be really good coming from you.
That's an excellent suggestion. The city manager and I both made note of that, and yeah, I think we have enough time I think we're already filling up the March newsletter, but I think we'll figure that out. So thank you very much for that comment. So if everybody agrees with the direction, let's just do a thumbs up because that's all we're really doing. All right, so Councilor Dickinson, thank you. So we have a unanimous direction, City Manager. All right, we'll move on to the next item. Resolution number 7. Thank you, Chief. Resolution number 7, Series 2023, a resolution setting certain water, wastewater, stormwater, and other fees, rates, and charges for the city of Louisville. And we'll have a staff presentation.
This is the one you've all been waiting for.
Let me get rid of this Markel one here.
Nice comment. I didn't think about the environmental impact, but we need
Yeah,
that.
good enough. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Corey Peterson, Deputy Director of Utilities. To start with, what this resolution is and the staff recommendation for tonight is a 8% increase in the wastewater rates and a 9% increase in the stormwater rates, no increase on water. These rates were brought to Finance Committee in June, July, and October, and they are the basis for the budget that was approved in October and fund the current budget process. The average monthly rate for a Louisville resident will move from about $116 to $120, so it's about a $4 increase. So this presentation is our standard presentation that we've done through Finance Committee, and we've provided it here for you. Let me jump to the next one. So the overview of the rates process here is we have two alternatives that we look at as we go through this process. The first one is just in time. That is rates that always hit right when the particular expense is due. We don't recommend that option. We always go with the smoothing where you have incremental increases throughout the years to get to those large cost increases. This is the basic financial equation that we base all of our rate analysis on. The monthly rates are variable. That's what you're approving tonight. Our tap fees are all based on projections. That comes into our revenues. We subtract out our expenses. O&M we consider somewhat fixed because all of our, or the majority of our O&M charges are tied to chemicals, electricity, staff, and there's not a lot of variability in those. And then our last piece is the CIPs. That's where we can really move rates around, and again, is tied to what was in the budget and approved back in October. So all of those get us to our balances and our targets that we really drive our rates to reach to. So our performance matrix are really split into two things. There's two targets that we're looking at as far as rate analysis. The first one is our debt service coverage. What this is it's our ratio of revenues or our operating to our operating expenses. That has to meet a certain threshold from a legal liability for our bonding and our rating agencies. The other one that we have is a minimum target for reserve funds. That's this bottom one here. Basically allows us to have a high credit rating as well as ensuring the minimum requirements for revenue forecasts. So our debt service coverage ratios are listed at the top here. The two that we currently have are for the Colorado Resource Power Authority at a 1.1 and then the Enterprise Revenue Bonds at a 1.15. The rate model uses this category here, which is a 1.2. We also run them with the tap fees, assuming those revenues come in as well, but the driver's always been without tap fees in this box in the middle. For performance metrics, our cash reserve and our working capital policy are the same. We both use a 25% operating that matches with finance. We also set the rates as a minimum to cover the increased costs from a maintenance and operations. That will then get modified occasionally, and you'll see that in the water fund as we get a little bit farther. The other difference is our turnback we set for 0 in the rate model. In the finance model, we use a 10% number. Again, the 0% just gives us a little bit more conservative when it comes to the rate setting. This shows our debt issuance. It's actually quite balanced well. You'll notice at the bottom, our totals run right around $2.5 million. Our water bonds are about to expire in 2025, but we have an increase in the stormwater and wastewater bonds that will pick up and keep that kind of consistent bond hit to the utility as a total. Our modeled tap fees, this is something that we get from the planning department and then is reviewed by Public Works as well as finance, basically based off of projections, what we think is going to come into the city and gets rolled into that rate analysis. Just a note, we do have red tail, assuming that is coming in through 2024 and 2026. This is our future influencing factors. These are things that we think will impact the rates as we work through the process. I'll just kind of run through them individually. The supply of materials is basically inflation. This is what we're seeing on a variety of projects, variety of CIPs, and is having an impact both in O&M and capital. There's the federal infrastructure bill that we think is out there that can bring some money into the city. We're still working through that process. We're also doing a utility master plan right now. We anticipate that that'll generate somewhere around $15 to $90 million in projects, and that'll be a long-term plan over the next 10, 20, 30 years. We also have a long-range capital replacement, so this is just our ordinary, regular replacement that we think will start increasing, and then additional development like the red tail that could move things around. So this is a good rule of thumb that we like to include in the presentation. This is just your general rate impacts. So about a 2.5% increase on water will generate about $1 million over a 10-year window, or about $100,000 per year. 4% on wastewater, 15% on stormwater. And then if you did a 1% every year, you'd get about $3.5 million a year in water, $3 million in wastewater, and $1 million in stormwater. So again, just trying to align those different percentages to show the impact throughout the rate model. So for water, we're currently projecting and showing as a smoothing 0% for 2023 through 2028. We show a 3% starting around 2029. This is when the basic inflation numbers start tying into just our regular operations, and so that starts driving the rates, and that's why we see this 3% increase. It's a little moving target at this point, and we'll make those adjustments on a yearly basis as we continue to do the rate model. This just jumps in, shows the just in time or the smoothing. Really doesn't change because both were 0% for the water side. Again, the debt dropping off in 2025, so we're meeting our debt ratios through the water fund. And then here is the cash reserve with this kind of dark orange line running across here is the target. So you can see we have good reserves as we work our way down spending capital through 2023 or 2021 into 2024 and on out into the end of the model of 2031. On wastewater, our previous recommendation was 4%. We've adjusted that to 8% to account for the solids handling CIP that's in design right now. That's projected at about a $4 million project and it is having a large impact on our wastewater. You'll see it kind of reciprocals, flips, and we start seeing that reduction as we get farther away from the model impact of that high CIP and we reduce to 2%. Again, debt service ratio from wastewater side is covered well. We stay above the line all the way through. You will see a couple dips here every now and then. The debt service is always looked at as a utility as a whole, so we do allow rates to kind of adjust on a fund-by-fund basis to allow those rates to catch back up. Again, here's that large CIP charge here, but we maintain our targets all the way through and we start gaining towards the end of the rate model. Stormwater is very similar. We were projecting 5% in 2022. We're now looking at 9s and 11%. This is tied to the large CIP on drainage 7-1. It's not as big as the solids handling, but the stormwater fund has a lower revenue amount, so it takes larger increases to generate those funds. and that's shown here on this slide. This is that large project that's currently planning out at 2029. So as a combined debt service ratio, we're quite above the 1.2 all the way through, and we maintain our targets all the way across, giving it a healthy utility fund. So here's our 2023 recommendations again, 8% for wastewater, 9% for stormwater. We're just lining up the various other charges so you can see those in the past. Again, water staying relatively even, wastewater nice and flat, and stormwater as well. This graph is quite nice. This is your comparative rates for residential, for surrounding communities. Some of these numbers still need to be updated as we wait for other communities to adopt their rates, but you can see Louisville is towards the lower end of rates for the surrounding communities. This is based on an average user, which is about 10,000 gallons. So individuals can vary. We do a similar comparison on the commercial side. Louisville actually shows up as the lowest when we do this comparison, and it's based on this 280,000 gallons a year. That's kind of the average commercial user that we see out there. Some are bigger, some are smaller. And so with that, we sum it up with the residential bill. Again, you see at about a $3 increase total, so $2.67 for wastewater and a 55-cent charge to stormwater. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Yeah, I have, well, first I want to say that this is amazing information. I really like the idea of the gradual increases and I can't remember the phrase you used, but smoothing, yes, thank you. I'm wondering if there was any impact with the fire victims not paying any water bills at all? And do you anticipate that that's going to come back at the same level? Or are a lot of homes rebuilding with a higher number of taps?
That is a fantastic question. So the rate model did account for a slight reduction in revenue based off of the homes that were destroyed. We're anticipating that those will come back in 2 to 3 years. But again, we keep the model up to date as possible. So as our revenue projections come in, we'll reevaluate that as it moves forward. What we're seeing for rebuild is all residential. So we're not seeing a big change for new money coming in necessarily.
I'd add that we're also still working through with our insurance carrier the business income, the lost business income component, and we don't have an answer on that yet. We're still going back and forth with our finance department, utilities, and their CPAs. So keep your fingers crossed.
So I'd like to ask a question on that. So in January of 2022, we forgave bills for everybody. Is that part of what you're claiming is lost revenue to the insurance company?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's actually bigger than the 560 homes we lost because that's all of the 8,000 residents plus commercial.
Yeah, it was the entire.
Right, it was a whole month of revenue. So that one is very significant and that could have an impact.
Yeah, and the CPAs are not making it easy, but we're not making it easy either. So we'll just keep pushing on it.
Sounds like a discussion for me.
Yeah, and I just want to point out we have not modeled that revenue in. So from a conservative basis, whatever money we receive will make all these scenarios better.
Exactly.
Councilor Most?
Can you explain a little bit about the Drainage Way Capital Improvement Project and the Solids Handling Capital Improvement Project? Just, what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So the solids handling component at the wastewater plant is essentially all the items that we didn't touch as part of the original expansion that was started in 2015 and was completed in 2017. So that's kind of the big driver for that. The drainage project is Drainage 7-1. It actually is the final component of our drainage master plan that includes kind of the north half of the city. There's some political issues that are associated with that has kind of drug it out a little bit, as well as tied to some other development, particularly the Coal Creek Station. So we're waiting for those developments to hit before the project would go in. Yes, jurisdictional, correct.
Thanks, that's all.
Councilor Lay.
Just a couple of things. I was on finance, and so we've been through this before, and I think this is the right way to go. One concern that we always have on this is people on fixed income, because they're the ones that notice it, and they're usually the ones who complain about it, not the only ones. But I think, number one, it may be good not to add more education items for the mayor to cover in his monthly. But at least at some point, maybe the city can provide some, good information to make sure that it's explained. There's good reasons for this. Comparing us to other communities, I think, is very useful here. It's still, going to be painful in certain respects, but I don't want to underestimate the pain that people do go through, because some people are really, really tightly budgeted in this city. Sometimes people forget about them, and we shouldn't. So I take that seriously. I know finance did too, and I think the smoothing is the way to go. The final question is just, we have a fund out there for assisting people with utilities, and I don't know how it's being used this year, or whether usually it is administered by Sister Carmen, but I hope that, are we drawing that down a lot right now with the other energy costs that people are suffering increases on, or?
I don't have data on the drawdown for Sister Carmen there.
Well, the Finance Committee funded that again for 2023. So, and the Finance Committee with the Finance Department has typically looked at that. If it does get drawn down, we have done budget amendments in the past when people have needed help with their utilities, so. Yes, Councilor Most?
Mayor, how are we reaching out to folks in our community that might need that help, that might not know?
That's a good question. Can the city manager help us with that?
I hope the Public Works Director can.
Yeah,
'Cause
so part of the process, and the reason we're coming to you early, is we do a bill insert mailer that talks about the rate increase. In another area, maybe we can improve that mailer, is to include that the other programs available in that mailer. And so we'll communicate all that in a unified way. And that happens, everyone will get that bill in April, or that mailer in April. The bill becomes effective in May, and then your first impact to your costs are in June.
So, yeah, and I know you have another comment. As part of that, Sister Carmen works with the county to qualify people for this. So we're the funding partner, and they're the qualifying partner. So your other
That's
comments?
great, yeah. When we send those inserts, I assume they go out in the electronic version as well?
Yep, they go all versions.
Great, and do we have that in Spanish? Are we providing that information in Spanish when we send it out?
Yeah, I believe we do.
Great, thanks.
Let's take public comment. Okay, looks like no public comment. So we'll go back to council. So is there any more discussion or a motion?
I would just have a short point of discussion that, boy, I think it's great to have the rate smoothing model at a time where we're seeing the consequences in natural gas bills of just passing through costs as they happen, and people are seeing not 8 or 9% increases, but 75 or 100% increases. So great work by our team here, I think. And if I have the motion in front of me, I'll, let's see. I would move the approval of resolution number 7, series 2023, a resolution setting certain water, wastewater, stormwater, and other fees, rates, and charges for the city of Louisville, Colorado.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
Just,
yes.
This is just want to reiterate, this is a fantastic presentation. This is so easily digestible. It's got a lot of data in it, but it's not overwhelming, and I just really appreciate the quality. It just makes it easy for us, and I think it also makes it easy for people in our community to actually understand what is happening. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Most?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fahey?
Yes.
Councilmember Hefner?
Yes.
Mayor Maloney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lay?
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
All right, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to ordinance number 1848, series 2023, an ordinance amending section 2.02.090 of the Louisville Municipal Code regarding the mayor's and the mayor pro tem salaries. This is the second reading. And so we'll open it up for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm Rhonda Hanger, Director of Human Resources. Recently, the city had our compensation consultant compare salaries of the mayor pro tem, and the council members, comparing those to salaries of other elected officials of 27 surrounding municipalities. And that list is in your council communication. And as you read through that, you'll probably notice that we have some very large cities. Aurora and Boulder are included in that. But we also have some smaller cities like Golden, Greenwood Village, and Lone Tree, which are much smaller than Louisville. And so we feel like we have a pretty good cast of comparisons in that list. And as a result of the comparisons, tonight I want to talk about making adjustments to bring council salaries up to the average market rate for 2023. And the first adjustment would be to increase the mayor's salary to an average market rate of $18,604 per year, which is an increase of $4,636 per year. Now, the mayor's salary has not increased since 2019. The second adjustment is to compensate the mayor pro tem at the average market rate of $11,993 per year, which is an increase of $329 per year. Currently, the mayor pro tem receives the same salary as all the other council members, but our market research shows that other municipalities actually compensate mayor pro tems at a slightly higher rate than the council members. Staff will not be asking for an adjustment to the salaries to the other council members. Council members currently make $11,664 a year, and that our research indicates that that salary is within the average market rates. Now, the city charter does state that salaries shall not increase during the term for which the mayor and the council members have been elected, and therefore the change made by this ordinance will not affect the current mayor or the mayor pro tem, but it will affect the terms after the election in November of this year. So finally, staff recommends that the adjustments be made to the mayor and mayor pro tem salaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarification? Yes, Councilor Lay.
Yeah, one question about the 27 municipalities. How many of those, besides Denver, are kind of more or less full-time mayoral positions or council member positions? How many of them have that sort of arrangement, do you know? I mean, if we, let me say it a little different way. If we excluded Denver from there and any other community that didn't have a full-time position of mayor, does it make, how much difference does that make?
If we excluded Denver, Boulder, and Aurora from our comps, we still have the small cities like Greenwood Village, Lone Tree, Evans, Federal Heights, Golden, all that are smaller than us. And so we feel like we do have a good comparison. We certainly, to my knowledge, it's not going to skew the numbers that we're looking at because we have such a large comparable list. Does that answer your question?
Not quite in terms of numbers, but I understand what you're saying.
Thank you. Counselor Dickinson.
Yeah, I think there are two things that that I'm contemplating. One is just, that I think it's very clear these salaries, indicate the current salaries indicate two things. One, we are not compensated for our time as we would be for normal occupation, right? This is sort of this odd, partly volunteer, partly compensated role. When I agreed to run for council, I thought I'd be getting like $200 a month, and by the time I was elected, you guys had changed the salary, so I was getting almost 4 times that. And in some ways, it almost robbed me of being able to claim volunteer status. Like, well, okay, well, I do get some money here, but it certainly isn't. It isn't compensation for our time. It is an accurate compensation for our time. So I think that's an important sort of starting point, that we're not trying to find a number that is a fair compensation for the amount of time a council member spends, or a mayor pro tem or a mayor spends doing this service for their community. So with that, I do think relative to each other on this board, if you will, one of spend a lot more time, or should spend a lot more time than others. And so I think a difference in that salary relative to their colleagues is fine for me. I don't find that offensive at all. I don't think it's a prestigious thing that the mayor would be getting more money. It's a recognition of a reality that they do put in more time and effort by obligation than the rest of us do. And then the very slight difference for Mayor Pro Tem, I think, is also a fair sort of indication. It isn't some huge difference, but currently Deb and future other people are required to do just a little bit more. And so I think it makes sense. I don't know if the numbers, the specific numbers, don't mean anything to me, like that $18,604 is the right number, but I do trust Rhonda that she's put in good work, and these are fair numbers, and relative to a council member, I think it's a fair number. So I'm fine with this. I'm also fine moving forward with what we have. I don't need to change it. This isn't something where I'm like, this needs to change. But seeing this in front of us, I'm fine with what I see. I'm fine with the mayor making about 50% more than their counterparts, and the mayor pro tem making just a tiny bit more than their counterparts. So I'm fine with this. Similar to maybe the last topic, if people feel strongly, I'm happy to go with the wind here, but thought it fair to at least put my stake in the ground.
Thank you.
You mind?
Councilor Hamilton.
Thank you. I appreciate the evaluation to keep those who are serving at market value. I recognize what was said regarding this is not the same compensation as your full-time job and career, right? But I would like to acknowledge that pay, although some may think it be small, can make the difference between us encouraging members of the community who may not otherwise participate in local government be able to afford to hire that babysitter so that they can come sit up here today. So albeit small increases, it could make a difference, and it could contribute to our EDI goals of being inclusive and encouraging more of the community to participate in this forum. So I support this, and I appreciate the consideration and evaluation.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any public comment. All right, seeing none. I appreciate all the comments, and I was around in 2017 when we went through this process. You might want to stay there a second. When we, as a council, first took this on from a policy perspective, we had issues about retaining employees. We had the director of libraries here, and, the library was one of those places where we were paying the staff in the library less than some of these communities we have here, like Boulder and Broomfield, communities around us. So we made a decision to make sure that we did a salary survey of those communities so that we wouldn't have people moving from a library job in Louisville to Boulder just because there was some differential in salary. Wanted to make sure that we were being fair. And we had that, especially with the police department, we had to make some changes there. So when I look at this list, when we look at staff salaries, I totally agree with the list. Because a librarian in Denver or Boulder or Longmont or Fort Collins, it's fairly easy to say what that salary survey is, what's the going market rate. Where I divert from this list is saying that, we go with some small and a lot of really large cities. I mean, Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, Aurora, Denver, Fort Collins, Longmont, those are all some of them have budgets and staffs like police departments that are 20 or 30 times bigger than ours. So when you look at the leadership of those departments, it's a very different job in my opinion. So with our city manager, if you go to a city manager of Aurora, I don't know, what is the budget? 50 times bigger, 50 times more employees, I don't know, but it's a scale difference. And so when I look at this, and I want to say, what are those comparisons? I think of Superior and Lafayette and Erie and those communities around us, maybe Broomfield, although maybe not. So when I look at this, those are the comparisons that make sense to me. Should there be a differential for mayor? Probably. There is a lot more effort. The one thing that you're proposing is that we also include a differential for Mayor Pro Tem, which probably makes sense as well. But I'm struggling with us using this list of municipalities, saying that's the right comparison for city council, where it's very different from staff positions. So that's where I come from in this discussion. Other thoughts?
Dennis, do you have a suggestion at a different number, or are you asking to kind of revisit the whole thing with different data?
I think the latter. I think for staff positions, it's absolutely the right list, and it makes perfect sense to me. I think we need to pick a subset of the municipalities for comparison for leadership positions and city council, mayor, mayor pro tem. That's my suggestion. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree almost entirely with what you're saying about salary changes, that we should be comparing ourselves to surrounding communities for this position, because this is, in my mind, an essentially a volunteer position. And if there are people in the community who can't afford, as Barbara mentioned, a babysitter in order to be in attendance, maybe that's something we can provide. And there are other ways that we currently, and going forward even more ways, provide assistance to people who have any kind of challenge, EDI issues, providing translators, providing access for physically handicapped people. This could be another way of getting more people to be able to serve on council that can't currently. But I just don't think that increasing the salary is necessarily going to make a difference in who will serve or could serve. I think there's other ways that we could support people with other needs.
Councilor Most?
So I appreciate what Mayor Pro Tem is saying and also what Councilmember Hamilton said. I think it's really important that we not ask people who are low and moderate income, who have whatever struggles, to ask for special treatment. I think it's really important to provide a level of salary that makes it possible for people who are not currently serving to serve without having to ask them to raise their hand and say, you know, I can't really afford to do this. Can you provide services for me? I think that's part of when I think about EDI. Like, you know, you don't want to have to ask people to separate themselves. You want to create a system that allows them to engage necessarily. And I hear what you're saying, and, you know, I appreciate that, but I think we have to balance it. Like, for me personally, honestly, you know, half the money that I earn pays for my house to be cleaned twice a month. And being able to do that provides a lot of stress relief for me so that I can focus time and energy. Not that I would spend as much time cleaning my house, but I hate cleaning my house. And so it's not just the cleaning, it's the, you know, the whole thing. So to me, that kind of thing really allows me to focus my time and attention on the council in a way that I wouldn't have, you know? So I think we have to, I appreciate what the Mayor Pro Tem is saying, and I also think we have to balance it. And I do believe, you know, what we've seen is the job of the mayor takes more time and energy. And if we want to make that more accessible, then I think it makes sense. And I don't know if the mayor pro tem job takes more time and energy, but I think it's fine to reward that, and I think it's fine to say, yeah, we're going to make this possible. And I don't know what the exact numbers are to do that, but it certainly seems to me that, you know, the work certainly that I saw our former mayor do, and it just seems to me the work that our current mayor is doing is more work than the rest of us are doing. So why not make it possible for people to, you know, engage if they can?
Councilor Lay.
Yeah, it's hard to have this conversation sort of generally, given the day job that I have. There's no question that we're employed and that this is a salary, and it is something that I recognize that people probably get. I mean, people probably get paid far more for doing their day jobs if they have day jobs, which not everybody has on council. I don't think that's as much the issue. I think that in structure, I have no problem with mayor being paid more, Mayor Pro Tem a little bit more than the councilman. All of that seems fine to me. I am likewise uncomfortable with this group of municipalities in terms of the band. I just think, and one of the challenges here is we don't have the underlying data where, you know, we could maybe just quickly just eliminate a couple of them and then just rejigger it. But I know that you could probably do that. I mean, the proposal I would make is, let's see, this is not going to be effective until November 2023. So we've got a little bit of time. I don't know that I hope it isn't a whole lot of extra work, but I think, I guess I would propose to strip out, I can suggest the names, but I think you've heard kind of a general sense that the big cities on this list, like Denver and maybe Fort Collins and all the rest of them, maybe if we just excluded those and excluded the smaller ones too, that's fine too. I don't, and focused more on ones right around us. It's a different situation because it's elected office, right? We're not, you know, it's not like I'm gonna go and, I'm gonna go over to Lafayette and be city council person over there because they're paying some big, you know, that's not gonna happen. But I do, you know, I think it's important for what Councilmember Hamilton said before, that we be fair And that we recognize that there are going to be people who are going to weigh this in the balance. Maybe we don't. Maybe nobody on council does that. Maybe, the time is, this is just an honorarium for some people. I don't feel that way. I think that's not the way it's conceptualized. It's not an honorarium. It's a salary. It's not a per hour wage. It's a predetermined amount for an indeterminate number of hours. And sometimes that's more, sometimes that's less. So that's what I guess I would suggest. And you're the expert on these kinds of things, but I think you've heard sort of our general sense, and I'll let the mayor summarize it. But I think the differential, particularly on the mayor, just seems a little bit, I don't know, maybe out of whack.
You're asking me to comment if the salary of the mayor is out of whack?
Well, knowing that you're not gonna.
Let me see if I can summarize where we're at. I think that I heard from all of my colleagues, they think the basic structure that's being proposed makes sense. So the mayor's salary is compared to other mayor's salaries. Adding the mayor pro tem was a differential. I'm hearing that makes sense. So we agree on that. And that these be set at a comparable market rate. And I think that I have proposed, and I think Councilor Lay has proposed, that we maybe go back to the way we did it in, I don't know, what was it, 2017 or something? We had a list of cities then that we felt were comparable. Because where this, I believe, absolutely works for staff, I don't believe it works as effectively for setting our salaries. And so for ours, they need to be more comparable geographically and size-wise. So that's my opinion, and I would give that direction to staff to rethink it that way. Yes, city manager.
Yeah, I understand you on that. And just a follow-up question, I heard the conversation also talking about council members and EDI goals and the ability to serve in that role. And this isn't something, your salaries don't have to be market-driven, if you will. I mean, that's, if you wanted to have a conversation about increasing council member, future council members' salaries towards that goal, that's something we could take a look at and bring back as well. This was Rhonda's analysis was just based upon comparables. So I was kind of hearing two different conversations there, one about mayor pro tem, and then another about overall just being an elected official. If I'm not hearing, I guess I need clarification on that side of it. Do you just want us to focus on, and the math may change some of this, but if it doesn't, do you want us to take a look at some kind of an increase for council members as well, just towards that EDI goal?
I think it would be hard to say no to that. I think coming back with more information for our discussion is a valuable thing.
Okay.
So that we understand what that means.
We'll start there.
Does everybody, yes, Councilor Most?
I don't want to belabor a point that Councilmember Lay said, but he said, basically made the comment that everybody here makes more money in their regular job. I just think we have to be careful, because that's what I thought I heard you say, and I'm like, that's the point of kind of talking about EDI, right? And there are people that, if they made $15 or $20 an hour doing this, that might be the same amount of money they make in their regular job, right? So I just wanted, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but I thought I heard that, so I just wanted to raise that. Okay.
So going back to you, city manager, do you feel like that we've given clear enough direction to move ahead?
Yes, sir.
All right, any questions or comments?
I have a question.
All right.
If you would like to set it to a date certain, then we wouldn't have to republish. But that's up to you. I mean, it's up to you guys what you want.
When would you like to do that?
Do you have the advanced agenda? Can you look at a date that has some room on it?
What are we in?
So are we looking at May or
May
something?
2nd?
Hey.
Yeah, that's okay.
No.
No rush, so.
Right, I mean, it doesn't affect anybody until November,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I just have one additional ask when you bring it back, which is assuming it's all public information, it would sure be great to see what the numbers are for the comparables.
Right.
Yeah, the
I think
spreadsheet,
it
sure.
would make this conversation quite a lot easier if we sort of knew the range and where the different chips fall.
Yeah, that is all public information, so, yeah, we should absolutely have that. I think Counselor Lay also mentioned that, so thank you.
Got it.
Are we good?
Good.
We're good.
All right, thank you very much for all your work on this.
Thank you.
All right. So the next two items are first readings. So we'll go to ordinance number 1849, Series 2023, an ordinance approving the vacation of 4 drainage easements located between lots 13 and 14, lots 14 and 15, and lots 15 and 16, and lots 16 and 17 of Block 1 dedicated by the replat of Enclave. First reading, set the public hearing for, it's going to be March 7th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We had to, because of a noticing error, we had to change the date.
Oh, okay, I just did.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. There was an error in the noticing, so that's as soon as we can address that.
Thanks.
Okay? So I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we'll move on to ordinance number 1850, Series 2023, an ordinance amending Section 3.24 of the Louisville Municipal Code regarding the tax and fee business assistance program. First reading, set public hearing for February 21st, 2023. And I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Pick one, they all said second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Well, we move on to the city attorney's report. You got to have something for us.
I have nothing. I'm so sorry. What do I have?
The city attorney approached our newest state legislator about a way that he can help us with a issue related to our lifeguards at our pool, so.
Okay, there'll be more in your next report.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to council comments, committee reports, and identification of future agenda items. I'm just going to make one comment. I want to, again, welcome our new counselors. Thank you for volunteering. And even though you're getting paid, we appreciate you stepping up as being a citizen of the city of Louisville.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Other,
Are we volunteers or employees, Chris, or independent contractors?
Your employees elected by,
I-
you'll notice it when they take money out of your.
Get a W-2, you're like, wait, I gotta pay taxes, so.
All right, this is when the attorneys can take this offline and discuss this. Any other comments or anything else for tonight? All right, we're adjourned.
That was a long one.
Although I think we did it, I think we did
Got a lot of work done.
Markel piece.